All right, good evening. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to call this October 2nd, 2023 work session to order, and I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Dr. Campley, Mr. Dorr.
Here.
Mrs. Evans-Brockett. Here. Mr. Fountain.
Here.
Mr. Keenan.
Here.
Dr. Kohler. Here. Mrs. Mayers. Mr. Saylor.
I'm here.
Ms. White.
Here.
Please join me in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a second, is there any discussion?
I was actually going to ask if the board would be amenable to moving items 9.05 and 9.06 up to prior to section 4, because I believe a lot of the audience is here for that tonight, and I think it'll become a lengthy discussion. So I was hoping we could have it and allow people to get on with their nights if they need to, and then be able to pay attention to the Education Committee and Finance Committee.
Are there any objections to that? Seeing none, I'd like to add one more caveat then. I would like to add this student. You have an objection? Okay. So, are you making an amendment then? Well, you have an objection, so go ahead.
It's not really,
You'd have to, yeah.
all right, it's just, I would prefer us to continue with the flow of the meeting and not change things depending on who or who isn't here.
Any other discussions? So you're making an amendment. I'd just like to, I assume, right, Sarah, you're making an amendment?
I
Yeah.
was looking for discussion
Yeah.
if the board was amenable to that.
I think it's fine. I would just like to add a caveat to that is that we move 2.01, which is our Mr. Kenworthy's report, prior to public comment.
Prior, okay, I'm fine with that, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the agenda to move 2.01 after 1.05, which is a special topic presentation for full day kindergarten, and then the the governance section, which is section 9, will move up right after section 3, the consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion is approved. I'm going to move over to our special topic presentation of full day kindergarten, and this is going to be given by Dr. Smith.
Correct. Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited tonight to be presenting on this topic as it's been several years since we looked at full day K. And it's exciting to think about this opportunity for our youngest learners. I would also like to point out that some of our elementary principals are here this evening, as well as maybe not physically in attendance, but I believe listening in are our kindergarten teachers, as they are very excited for tonight as well. So just to start out, we did create an action plan that we have been using over the last several months to think about all the aspects of full day kindergarten that we wanted to consider. Anything in green we have completed at this point in time and gotten to our target point of having a recommendation for the board this evening. And if we recommend that, which we will be at the end of the presentation, we are looking for implementation in 24-25 next school year. So the first thing, one of the biggest questions is always our student enrollment and what staffing does that drive out. We have two scenarios that we are presenting this evening. Both are for the 24-25 school year. So we have taken our current students, we have promoted them 1 year. We are also looking at, we've added a 10% increase in this first scenario to our kindergarten numbers as they currently stand. We usually see around 11% of students between kindergarten and first grade, the enrollments increase. So we have added that in this scenario. We have also maintained all of our class size guidelines as per policy, and our K+ program, which is an intervention program that is a half-day program, would no longer exist in a full day scenario, and so those teachers would be assumed into the kindergarten teachers. So in this scenario with a 10% projection in our K-5 program, it drives out the need for one additional staff member to support the implementation of full day K in all 4 buildings. I've also shown a second projection because we're just not quite sure how many more kindergarten students are we going to get if we offer a full day K program. So we did want to then also show what a 20% projection would look like, just so that we can be prepared for what that may be. We did call daycares, we called local places that may be offering full day K programs to get an idea of what we might see coming in. And historically, over the past 6 years, it's been about an 11% increase, again, from that kindergarten to first grade. So in this scenario, it drives out 2 teachers. So by having that increased projection, it does require 1 additional teacher to implement full day K. So I also looked at the way we look at staffing every January and the months that move into spring. We look at the middle school program as well as the high school program, and are there any staffing changes there? The declining enrollment that we have been seeing for several years is in the second year of reaching the middle school level. And so we will see a decrease in staffing in the middle school of -2 positions. Again, all of this is preliminary based upon the numbers we have at this time, but we would project a decrease of 2 staff at the middle school. So these are the 2 scenarios that are being presented. Again, the 10% in the middle there, actually in a net change of a -1 position across the K-8 program. The 20% projection is a net 0. So in either of those scenarios, administration feels pretty comfortable that we are able to implement full day kindergarten without the need to add an additional teacher to be able to do that. Next, we looked at our facilities. The last time that we did a full day K program review, we did need to add several staff, as well as our facilities could not accommodate. There's a lot here on the slides, but basically with the declining enrollment that we have seen, we believe we are able to fit a full day kindergarten program in each of our elementary buildings without making any changes. However, to be completely transparent, we know that we will be tighter in some buildings than in others. You can see in some buildings, one of our special areas, wellness, may need to be on a cart and not have its own classroom. Skip Back, for example, has every single instructional spaces utilized. We may have to realign some of our artistic support programming, or at Schwenksville, the Head Start program. That is a program that we provide the facility. MCIU provides all of the staffing and the resources that are needed for that program. But that may need to be re-looked at as to which building in the elementary schools might host that. So again, we are able to accommodate it, or we believe that we can, but some of the buildings will be, again, tighter than some of the other buildings in the district, which creates some inequities in terms of what's available for different staff and student use. So because of that, because some of the buildings would be fuller than others, I've put this out there in that there have been conversations or questions posed to us as administration. Well, have you thought about any different grade configurations? And we want to be very transparent and let you know we have started to have some initial conversations about that. I certainly don't want to steer the conversation tonight from full day kindergarten to realigning grades, but I want to be transparent and let you know that we have started to look at it. And I'm just going to share some preliminary information this evening. So on the left, you will see if we maintain our current configurations, which means a K-5 building and a 6-8, the 2 middle schools, you will see what our projections are for the 24-25 school year. So you can see 15 staff are needed to provide instruction to 5th grade, and then to keep our middle schools, you can see again that -2 positions. On the right gives you just a look at staffing, and there's so much more to this discussion than just staffing, but it gives you an idea if we were to move into a 5-6 and a 7-8 building. You can see the staff then that would be required for the 5-6 building is 29 teachers, and for the 7-8 is 28 teachers. I have met with both principals at Middle School East and West, and we have talked about the space that they have available, and again, preliminarily, we believe that these 2 configurations could happen in both Middle School East and Middle School West, be able to accommodate the spaces that we need. So what I show you here then is just looking again at that whole K-8 program. What does staffing look like if we maintain our current configuration versus if we were to consider moving to some sort of different configuration? So on the left, if we maintain where we're at, you can see the number of staff 23-24 to 24-25. That includes full day kindergarten, is a net 0. Again, no add and no reduction in staffing. But on the far right, moving to those different scenarios, we actually have a reduction of 5 staff. Now that doesn't mean that staff are furloughed or anything like that. It means through our natural attrition and reallocation, they are moved into different positions for which they are certified for. And that again is a -5 or a reduction of 5. These are based upon the 20% projection in kindergarten that I showed. I will call out the little narrative that's up there as well. Administration is not ready to make a recommendation on this at this point. This was very preliminary just to get a glance at what it might look like. There is quite a bit more curriculum, programming, the logistics of a move, community input, lots of other pieces that we would want to consider. But it is something that, should the board be interested in that, we could continue to investigate with the possibility of a 25-26 school year. At least that would be our recommendation from administration if we want to look at this, that we consider it for the following year. We also looked then at the lunch schedule to have full day kindergarten. We would need to add a 6th lunch into our schedule. The schedules vary by building dependent upon their needs. They run anywhere from 10:30 to 1:50. By adding another kindergarten lunch, you can see we need to extend that a little bit. And again, they vary slightly by building. We would also offer a snack time for our kindergarten students. We currently do have cafeteria monitors in each of the buildings that would be able to support that additional 6th lunch. However, one of our buildings, Skip Back, is requesting 1 additional cafeteria monitor if we move towards full day K. They are the largest building out of the entire district. They would also be running 5 sections of kindergarten, the most out of any of our buildings. And little ones often need help opening things when they are getting to lunch, so that 1 additional cafeteria monitor cost would be included in our projection. I've also met with our new food service director, Ms. Kelsey Gardner, and she has projected that we would need to increase about a half an hour of time for one of the food service staff to come in to help prep. But however, we would have increased purchasing and meals because our students currently don't eat, but now they would be purchasing a lunch, and that will offset the costs. So she's projecting that her budget, which is a separate budget from the district budget, would actually still have a net profit even with full day K and that increased staffing. And she also has ideas for how we could use laminated badges to help our kids with an ease of through that cafeteria line. I've talked with Dr. Boyd and Dr. Gibbons in terms of special education. I've presented this slide before when we've given updates. We're not anticipating any increase in costs associated to special education, as our most neediest students in early intervention are already receiving full day K. So in terms of staffing, what you see on the slide here is the overall financial impact of staffing requests, with no request for an administrator or teachers, request for 4 paraprofessionals, 1 in each building to specifically support kindergarten, and then that 1 cafeteria monitor drives out slightly over $250,000 for staffing. I have met with staff, and I think this emoji captures their interest. We've had faculty meetings at each school building where they had opportunities to ask questions and share input. I've had 2 meetings with the kindergarten teachers across the district, and I know the building principals have also met with their kindergarten teachers, and we've also talked to our PVEA leadership, and all of them are very much in support of moving forward with full day kindergarten. We also have looked at our transportation pretty extensively. You can see some of the numbers up here on the board in terms of we would have some cost savings because we'd no longer be running buses in the middle of the day and the diesel fuel costs for that. We would be projecting, though, about 150 students more on the AM and the PM buses that currently exist, which will drive out more buses. However, you'll note at my last bullet there is we have seen some great recent efficiencies in our transportation department. Mr. Ganesh and Dr. Russell have really been working with STA on that. And we've actually reduced the number of buses that we are currently using. So we believe adding anywhere from 2 to 4 buses back in will not increase the budget in this particular area. And so we're not showing any cost due to full day K for transportation. Furniture then, I give you some pictures just of what our current kindergarten classrooms look like. Very colorful, lots of different things to make it a welcoming environment for kindergarten students. You can see from the kidney tables to we have clear touch panels in every one of our classrooms to the kindergarten teachers really prefer, the majority of them, to have more tables where students can be collaborating together. These pictured are actually whiteboards so the students can be writing on them and solving things right as the teacher is moving around and they're working together. There's some additional things that when you create new classrooms for kindergarten that we would want to consider, from some cubbies to carpets in the classroom, as you saw in that first picture, some chair covers, easels, and on the bottom right is what is considered a sensory table, or one example of what that could look like. So we have solicited information from our teachers about what would we need. The principals have looked at what they already have in their buildings, so that we're not just purchasing, but we are seeing and using what we may have to create these additional classrooms. So this is a pretty detailed, but a good estimate on what we think we're going to need from the main furniture through, the carpets, maybe some bookshelves and some miscellaneous items that we have ballparked a number for what that would look like. So right now I'm estimating slightly $33,000 for what would be the furniture to be used in these classrooms. Then we also looked at scheduling, and this is something that we definitely need to delve into a little bit more should the board approve full-day kindergarten. This is what was recommended the last time we did a review of full-day K. It is just a draft, but it shows you a general idea of the number of minutes and the difference between a half-day program and a full-day program and how we might consider allotting that time within the schedule. The next slide then is going to break things down into those graphics. So the movement one is your recess time, your play time, creative play. The heart is, maybe some of your social emotional, your morning meeting, those types of things. And then the book is really the academic time, which was, of course, where most of the majority of the day will be spent. So we had developed this several years ago, and again, it just gives you more of a breakout that you can see snack and some of the different pieces in there. This would again need to be revised. We'd like to visit some other full-day kindergarten programs in the county and learn from them, and then revise this to really figure out what the program would look like specifically. We also then looked at curricular resources and what may be needed in this regard. These are very specific things listed on the left in terms of our programming that we currently have. Many of it is ELA materials because we would be having some additional teachers that we currently don't have, maybe teacher resources for. We would be needing to purchase that. We have mostly the student resources we need because we already teach these students. So if there's workbooks and things, we already have them for all students. So the majority of the costs are for those additional teachers to have the teacher materials. We also know we would need some additional creative play type materials in the new classrooms. So again, you can see an estimate of about $56,000 here. Again, they are based upon the enrollment projections that we have. And they do not include anything for math because we're going through a complete curriculum review K-5 for math right now. So we'll just include that in there. So when I put it all together for you, all of the pieces that we looked at, we're projecting about a $350,000 increase in the budget to be able to implement full-day K. That is about half of what it was when we projected 5 years ago, and again, mainly that's due to that declining enrollment. So administration's recommendation is for the school board to consider the implementation of full-day kindergarten in the 24-25 school year. If you should do that, we have an action plan for the steps we'd want to complete by about March or April of this year, and then be able to have things well planned out and rolled out for next school year. I do believe we have a placeholder on the agenda for next week if the board would like to keep that as an action item for next week, but I'm certainly open to answer any questions that you have, and I don't know, Dr. Russell, if you'd like to add anything.
I don't think so, Dr. Smith. I think at this point, you did a nice job explaining, very comprehensive, and I see Ms. White has her hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, your team also for putting this together. This is something that I've been waiting for since I became a parent in the district, so I appreciate all of it. I have a couple of questions, and I can tell you them all at once, and then we can go from there, I suppose. I'm wondering about class size. If there was any feedback from the principals in the buildings regarding the comfort level with the class sizes, and whether or not there was consideration given. I didn't see it as part of the additional staffing needed, but to provide each kindergarten teacher with a permanent in-classroom assistant.
So the enrollment projections that you see are comparable to what we do every January and then throughout the rest of spring, in that we use the class size guidelines in policy. So you will see differences. For example, Evergreen right there has averages of 17, where Schwanksville has averages of 20 or 21. Those play out over the spring months, and we try to adjust as needed to make sure we're within guidelines. I really haven't had feedback from teachers that these sizes are, that they're concerned about them. And we have not had a request for a para per classroom. We currently don't have that now in our kindergarten sections. They share. So I think that they thought that the request for one additional para per building focused on kindergarten with the one that they already have sharing would be able to meet their needs.
Okay, and I guess that's fair enough considering we could reassess after it's implemented. I guess I just would be concerned about, the Title I schools with a higher class size, maybe there would be higher needs, for example, in those buildings. So that's my first question. I am in favor of the reallocation of the students, the different buildings for the middle school level. I think that would go far by way of culture, understanding you're not ready to implement that now. But that is something that I think we should continue to explore and really take a look at, because I think that overall, by the time then those kids get to the high school, I think there'll be more cohesion and just a better culture overall. And then the last item that I wanted to ask about was with regards to the furniture that was needed. And this is more of just a general comment, but I just want to make sure that it was considered that the furniture that's needed will not just be put, in other words, that you won't be merging the existing furniture to make complete classrooms and then giving new furniture to the additional, that every kindergarten teacher gets something new. Does that make sense?
I think what you're sharing makes sense. I would say we haven't gotten to that level of detail
Understood,
yet.
but that
We've
was
looked at
my,
what we have,
those were
right?
my initial takeaways. But overall, I'm really excited to be able to offer this to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm also very excited about this. I just think it's kind of the way of the world right now that we have a full day program. My concern, or question, I guess rather, is starts, if we look at slide 19, when we're talking about minutes, when we discuss what a half-day program looks like to a full-day program, I'm concerned, and this, I know we're not there yet with curriculum of what it looks like. I just want to make sure that moving into this, if we go with a full-day program, that we are not inundating these kids with a rigor that then will create behavioral problems because it's too much. So like I'm looking, for example, on the next slide, slide 20, writing instruction 40 minutes. 40 minutes for a kindergartner. You know, again, it all depends on how you're going to lay that out, but that's a long time to do writing. I would love to see actual creative play, like science and social studies is great opportunities for some real world activity and play, and that's only allocated 30 minutes. So I just hope that when the curriculum time comes, that it's mindful of the fact that these kids need built-in play time and time to explore and to learn to love learning, and not to be a first grade in a kindergarten class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for expressing that concern. It is one that the teachers have expressed as well. And it was the intention, and when this was created 5 years ago, as well as the intention moving forward, that we balance that. This is really just to show you the cumulative time that we initially thought. So that writing block would not be 40 minutes straight of that. It would be chunked, right? But yes, a lot more work to do. Like I said, I know that they are excited to visit other schools, see what their schedules look like, and then come back and look at the programming that we have and figure out what may be best.
Ms. Evans-Brockett.
So I was on the committee however many years ago when we first discussed this. And one of the big concerns was the facilities, particularly at Skip-Back. And that seems to be still a little bit of a concern. Are you saying that there may be the need for all specials to go on a cart?
No, good question. So currently, Skip-Back is the only building that has wellness on a cart already. We are saying that wellness would need to continue on a cart for next year. Other special areas, right now we're saying they can maintain their individual classrooms based upon our projections. We would really be looking at, in Skip-Back, the redesign possibly of the autistic support program. It requires 3 classrooms plus several related services that need space to service that program. Might we have a different way to structure that to at least gain 1 classroom back? So that's something that we've been starting to look at, but we are not at a point where, and I'm looking at Mrs. Nassau, I just to clue, we are not at a point where we would be looking at all of the specials being on a cart. Right now, it would be status quo to what currently is.
Okay.
If enrollments change and something, then we are tighter in that building, we may have to consider that, but we have some ideas for the autistic piece.
And you said restructure, so you wouldn't be looking to move the autistic program out of Skip-Back?
Currently, that is not a recommendation.
Okay, because I know that was an addition just a couple years ago and has been a really nice addition to that
Yes.
building. So.
We've gotten lots of positive feedback about that program at Skip-Back.
So again, the concerns at the time 4 years ago were all the things that could be lost along with the large increase in financial needs. So I'm glad it seems like a lot of those have been addressed, and I think this is great to move forward.
The only thing I'll just add to is 5 years ago when we did this, we did not get anywhere to the level of detail that we did this time. We weren't down to the nitty-gritty of the exact cost of resources and the exact cost of furniture, so I feel like we've gotten a lot farther. We kind of stopped the discussion a couple years ago because of what you pointed out, Mrs. Evans-Brockett.
Any other discussion? Thank you very much.
Could I just ask then, would
Of
you like the
course.
placeholder to stay as an
Yes.
action item for next week?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Student liaison report?
Yeah, hello, I'm here by myself again. Claire's at her soccer game. I wish she could be here, but good luck to her and her teammates. Also, Dig Pink, which is happening just 50 feet away from us. Good luck to them. I just want to highlight one thing for tonight. We just want to thank all the volunteers that helped out with the homecoming dance. A lot of my friends had a great time just in the gym. We want to thank all the staff and parents that helped out. It was a great event that all the students liked. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to comments on any topic. Bring up the board. So here's how it's going to work. You have 3 minutes to talk when you come up to the podium right here. Adjust the mic, make sure it's turned on. Put your name and where you're from, and then you can talk. To the audience members, this is not a give and take. The person speaking addresses the chair, the board. The audience members listen. If we could limit applause and chatter, that would be great. And we'll start with the sign-up sheet and Bob Liggett.
Good evening, Robert Liggett, Perkiomen Township. I'm glad I got the chance to speak with you all tonight. The headline for tonight I really wish would have been full-time kindergartens coming to PV, or we have a supervisor for equity and student services on the agenda that we hope to get hired here. These are the things that I wish that we were talking about as a community in the board, not that you're ignoring it, but it's the emphasis here has shifted to something that is disturbing. We took what would have amounted to a complaint by a parent, and instead of going through the normal processes to deal with this, we decided to short-circuit it by introducing a policy last month, totally going around the normal way that we create policy. And I believe that almost everyone is in agreement that the past month has been nothing but at least chaotic. I would hope that the board would be able to do better than this. I would hope that we would see the wisdom of the system that we have in place for making policy, where it goes to a committee, where the public gets to speak on it in committee, when there are multiple times for research, for editing, to bring the process through so that at the end of the pipeline, we end up with a policy that we can all stand behind and all support. Every time that we go around this system, we introduce problems. And the problem in this case is really detrimental to this district. We're asking that a person that's in a minority that has civil rights, we're asking them to give up those rights because a majority, whether that be the population or on the board, feels that their rights aren't as important as theirs. That is totally un-American. The thing that rights are important about is they protect individuals. Just like my First Amendment right here, I can say whatever I want and everybody in this room can disagree with me, but I have a right to say it. A person's individuality and how they view themselves, whether it be racially, religiously, or what their gender identity is a right, and we should defend it.
Gracie Henn.
Hello, Tracy Ann, Gilman Township. And Bob's right. Everybody deserves rights. But when you cross boundaries that you're talking about crossing, you're taking away rights of safety for individuals. This is from the Washington Examiner. In a gender-neutral bathroom in New Mexico in a school, 12-year-old is assaulted and violated, never reported it for fear of being called a bigot. She reported it, and the school board told her it was her parents' problem. She now suffers from suicidal tendencies. In Loudoun County, we all know, a boy claimed transgender, gender fluid, and he raped 2 girls in 2 different schools. Last fall in Oklahoma, a student beat up a female peer in a gender-neutral bathroom, a transgender student. In April, in California, a student fought his female peers. He already had complaints against him of showing his genitals in the women's locker rooms and bathrooms. This is ongoing as well. By one-siding the issue with the assumption that you're protecting all is wrong. By making sure a select few feel safe and not considering the rest of the students is selfish. By allowing the use of bathrooms by whoever wants to use them based on how they feel that day is immoral. In policy, the policy that you want to talk about tonight, 103.2, it states that students should be allowed to use the restroom that corresponds to the gender identity they consistently assert at school. If you can't control vaping, smoking, drugs, and everything else in the bathrooms, who's going to monitor that? Who's going to protect those in the bathroom from those who don't belong in there? In August 1920, women won the right and rights and responsibilities of men, of citizenship. The fight for this was over 100 years long. Many women came through and have fought for women's rights. Even Riley Gaines has to fight in sports for women's rights. I registered Democrat originally, many, many years ago, to support women's rights. For other reasons, I've re-registered as Republican. Again, I'm fighting for women's rights. And I can see the path of this, of allowing this crossover. You're gonna have men in women's restrooms, you're gonna have men in women's locker rooms, you're gonna have men in women's sports. You're eliminating women from their safe spaces and competitions because the biological male makeup does not compete with the women's biological makeup. You want equality? Stop it here. Vote the right way. Protect women's safety and future rights right here. Thank you.
Janice Sheridan. Janice Sheridan.
Janice Sheridan, Skippack Township. This is a compilation of Dr. Grossman's book and Abigail Schreier, who's an author and investigative journalist. But I'm here asking, how did we get to this place where we're all supposed to pretend that the only way you know if I am a female is to give you my pronoun? Where did we get to where the medical, educational, psychological organizations have become life coaches and allowed a child to self-diagnose at an age when they cannot gauge the loss that they will be feeling in the future? And how has the media become so complicit? In 2007, we had 1 transgender clinic in the United States. Today, we have 300, and Planned Parenthood gives testosterone on the first visit. Testosterone and top surgery is readily available. There are 3 areas where transgenderism is prominent. 1, in childhood, where the very young do suffer gender confusion, and generally with parental guidance and/or counseling figure it out on their own. 2, adolescent girls, most of whom are victims of social contagion. Earlier, their body discomforts manifested itself in anorexia or bulimia. And then there are the activists who are using the other 2 groups to attack women and advance their goal of chaos and social upheaval. What they all have in common is that, well, they were all steeped in lies. Lies about the positive and lasting results of experimental treatments, lies about the researchers, about eradicating women's protective spaces and rights, and lies to convince people this is the only way to save a community from suicide. Gender ideology tells women they are not entitled to their fear or their sense of unfairness as biological men invade their protected spaces and claim their trophies and awards. For this group, it is not enough to provide a separate unisex bathroom while having a bathroom for women. It is not enough to have an open category for trans athletes who do not want to be stigmatized while preserving girls' teams for girls. All the while, the activists push this movement as a conservative issue rather than a medical one. Activists, many of whom are not transgender themselves, want no distinguishable sex, no male-female, no female sports teams, no protection of female spaces. They will do this entirely on male identification, i.e., all that a male felon has to do is to change the feeling of his identity one day and his pronouns, and he is allowed in a female prison. Before school administrators even consider changing the norm, I want to know what medical degrees and what factual research gives you the authority to change these edicts. The norm, to change the norm in favor of an activist group with no real science to back it up and no real honest, sincere beliefs or desire to benefit society.
Thank you very much. Terry Mulville. Terry Mulville. Jill Hall will be next.
Good evening, Terry, Collegeville Borough. With my comments, I'd like to give an explanation of Moms for Liberty and why the PV community needs to listen and care. Moms for Liberty is an anti-government organization founded in 2021 that targets teachers and school officials. The group advocates for the abolition of the Department of Education, supports book banning, refers to teachers' unions as terrorist organizations, and spreads hateful rhetoric against the LGBTQ community. In June 2023, the Southern Poverty Law Center, SPLC, listed the organization as an extremist group over accusations of harassing community members, advancing misinformation about LGBTQ people, and fighting to remove materials about diversity from classrooms. They said that the group's primary goals are to fuel right-wing hysteria and to make the world a less comfortable or safe place for certain students, primarily those who are Black or LGBTQ. Pennsylvania has the second highest number of Moms for Liberty chapters in the country behind Florida, which is where the group was founded. Members of the PV school board and 5 for PV candidates for the board have ties to Moms for Liberty. PVSD President Jason Saylor has attended local Moms for Liberty meetings, and Moms for Liberty Montgomery County Chapter Chair Vicki Flannery has attended and is here tonight at the PV school board meetings, and 5 for PV events, though she does not live in our school district. Other PV school board members, including Matthew Dorr, who is also up for re-election on the PV or 5 for PV ticket, and Rowan Kean and/or their wives participate in Moms for Liberty social media groups. Attacks. Let's talk about the LGBTQ community. Moms for Liberty has attacked this community and their rights with a particular focus on gender identity and the transgender community. The group refers to the term groomer to refer to an adult who supposedly endangers children by exposing them to any information about sexuality or gender. PVSD President Jason Saylor, PV Vice President Kim Mayers, also up for re-election on the 5 for PV ticket. Dorr and Keenan support the proposed policy 702 that would forbid transgender and intersex students from using school restrooms that match their gender identity. Let's talk about book banning. Moms for Liberty has spearheaded book bans, often focusing on books with racial or LGBTQ themes. Examples on their list include things such as The Kite Runner and The Hill We Climb. In one example, they opposed an autobiography of Rudy Bridges about her experience as a Black student integrating into a formerly all-white school. They said the book focused too much on negative historical events, such as her recollections of the white mob yelling at her on her way to school, and photos of firemen hosing students on their way to school. The school board president, Mr. Saylor, personally proposed the book ban 109.1 for our district and filed 6 out of 9 challenges targeting PV high school library books. Ms. Mayers challenged The Bluest Eye, a Nobel Prize-winning American novelist, Toni Morrison. 5 of the titles challenged appear to be on a list distributed by Moms for Liberty.
Thank you very much. Jill Hall. Jill Hall, and then followed by Dr. Wade Weston.
Jill Hall, Collegeville Borough. Thank you guys for listening. I think we need to continue on with the Moms for Liberty story here. They have a history of harassment. They are designated as an extremist group by the SPLC because of a consistent pattern of harassment campaigns, including in Monroe County, the chapter, one of the chairpersons was arrested on summary charges of harassment. A Moms for Liberty affiliated school board member in Charleston, South Carolina said he would show up at an educator's doorstep with a gun if a teacher came out as transgender. And then we had our incident here on the 21st, with the bomb threat reportedly linked to the LGBT policy 720, or the anti-LGBT policy. They also have ties to other extremist groups, including white nationalists, election deniers, and participants in January 6th insurrection. They also have a connection to the Proud Boys. In June 2023, a Moms for Liberty chapter in Indiana even quoted...
Can you pause the time real quick? You're fine.
Okay.
I'll just throw you out. I'm not going to have any of that nonsense tonight. None of it. Zero. Don't interrupt the speaker again. Don't giggle. Don't smirk. We'll just shut the room down. We're not going to have this today. Tired of that bullshit. Go ahead.
Thank you. And honestly, I was just going to keep going, but thank you. They quoted Hitler, and on the front page of their newsletter, it said, "He alone who owns the youth gains the future." The next month, at their national convention, a Moms for Liberty co-founder told attendees, "One of our moms in a newsletter quotes Hitler, and I stand with that mom." The audience cheered. I watched that video. It was chilling. How is Moms for Liberty involved in the Perkiomen Valley School Board? In summary, Moms for Liberty is a right-wing extremist organization. They harass and divide communities by attempting to foment outrage against minority groups, regardless of what they are. The current PVSD president and other school board members on the 5 for PV ticket are closely aligned with them in their views. We've really got to be careful and think about our votes, because this is what is raising all of this division in our community. Thank you.
Dr. Wade Weston. Alicia Rosas will be next.
Good evening. Wade Weston, Collegeville Borough. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'd like to first thank the administration for that very nice presentation on full-day kindergarten. Full-day K is something that we've been looking at in the district for a very long time, and I'm glad to see it beginning to come to fruition here. I hope the board will approve the plans for going forward. Tonight's agenda includes a vote to adopt Policy 720, a policy that illegally discriminates against transgender students. Despite being rejected by the board at last month's meeting, and despite the recommendation of our policy committee for further review and discussion, the policy is back on the agenda tonight. My main question here is, where are these policies coming from? We know that Policy 720 is a direct lift from Penn Ridge School District policies, but where did Penn Ridge get their policy? Who is writing these policies? Do we know? Does Mr. Saylor know? If you know, then please tell us, and if you don't know, why don't you know? Who is pushing these policies, and why are we taking direction from them? What will they be expecting from us in the future? My kids went to school in PV. I live in PV. I pay taxes in PV. I do not want someone from outside PV calling our shots. The claim that Policy 720 is to promote safety just doesn't hold up. PV's practice of letting students use their gender-aligned bathroom has been in place since 2018. No safety issues have been raised. What about other school districts? What are they doing? In Montgomery County, 11 school districts have either transgender student policies that explicitly permit gender-aligned bathroom use, or they have policy language similar to PV's regarding gender identity non-discrimination. There are 9 such districts in Delaware County, 5 in Chester County, 3 in Bucks County. Do we know of any problems with their policies? I haven't heard of any. Do you know? Have you asked? Have you looked into it? At the same time, we have been hearing from trans students here at PV and elsewhere that they are experiencing harassment and bullying when using non-gender aligned bathrooms. We are seeing incredible hate directed at trans students on social media. Policies like 720 actually are putting these students at risk. Ultimately, Policy 720 is unenforceable. It does nothing but point fingers at the other. at people who don't align with what we consider to be a norm. We have seen the effects of othering throughout history. There are countless examples of the damage that's done to people and to communities, and we must get away from that. We need to come together as a community. The public schools are central to that ideal. It's the one institution where the entire community comes together. We need to realize that there's strength in our differences and to work to ensure that all members of the community are represented, included, and valued. We cannot lift ourselves up by pushing others down. I ask you, please reject Policy 720 and focus on the real needs of this school district. Thank you.
Alicia Rosas. Jeremy Moore will follow.
Hi, good evening, board. Thank you for having us. I'm Alicia Rosas. I'm from Skip-Pack Township, and tonight I'd like to spend my 3 minutes talking about the very important area of the 1776 Project Pact and the important connection that it has with the Perkiomen Valley School District. The 1776 Project Pact is a political super PAC with a focus on banning the teaching of critical race theory, a graduate-level legal theory that is not taught in public schools. But in reality, the group targets almost any teaching about racism and diversity, as well as attacking topics related to transgender rights. The 1776 Project Pact uses misinformation and dog whistles in the hope of fabricating outrage and driving fears amongst the white population that they are losing their privileged spot at the top of society. Their main objective is to support school board members who are aligned to their orthodoxy. The 1776 Project Pact and the board members they endorse are trying to downplay the horrific history of slavery to protect the feelings of white children who might feel bad about what their ancestors may have done. An example of how this can play out is what happened in July 2023 when the Florida Board of Education approved several new social studies standards, which included the following about the benefits of slavery. Quote, slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Well, it's important to follow the money. The 1776 PAC received a $900,000 donation, or 35% of its 2021-22 funding from Restoration PAC, which is heavily funded by a mega donor, a guy named Richard Uline. He has a history of supporting far-right candidates, has often supported efforts opposition to gay, transgender, women's bodily autonomy, and reproductive rights. So in summary, a GOP billionaire who fights against racial, gender, and LGBTQ equality and supports electoral denialism is the largest donation of a super PAC designed to support school board candidates who will fight against teaching about racism and diversity. Well, why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing it up because the super PAC has endorsed the 5 for PV slate of candidates, the school board candidates led by Mr. Saylor. What's more, 5 for PV is proud of this association, celebrating it on their social media. It's important for this community to understand who is supporting the 5 for PV campaign because there is an expectation of certain behavior in exchange for a PAC's support. In this case, the expectation is explicit that these candidates will act against the interests of minority and diverse groups. This goes directly against the Perkiomen Valley mission statement, which is to cultivate an inclusive community of learners empowered to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally. The PV community should not support candidates who will not support our mission. All of the information that I have given here is readily available on numerous articles online, and I'd encourage our community to also look it up and research it. Thank you.
Jeremy Moyer. After Jeremy will be Tim Jagger.
Thanks for being here.
Hold on, what's your name?
Jeremy Moore.
And you are, sir?
Lower Frederick.
Hold on. I have Moyer, M-O-Y-E-R, from Lower Frederick. Wait, you're the guy I called, and then you're going to go next, and then Tim. And then we'll go from there. Are you guys related?
No, not at all. That's Moyer. I'm Moore. At the last meeting, it was very chaotic, everything else. I just want to remind everybody of a quote that some guy came in late, some attorney, I forget his name. He said about their confusion as well as their mental illness. That in itself, he was standing up for them, but at the same time, that shows directly that The other one, the lady that just spoke about the quote from Hitler. Hitler had many quotes, and I remember in history school in Great Valley talking about Hitler, and one of his other quotes was, "How do you take over a country? You remove the alpha male." Just saying. But if this goes the route that you're talking about with being able to identify and use whatever bathroom you want to use, does that mean non-students who are not part of the school are going to be allowed able to sit in the student sections at a football game or other sporting events? Thank you.
Tim Jagger will be next. You are?
Jeremy Moyer.
You're also from Lower Frederick. Okay. Miss Widener, I'm lost. I don't know what happened. Go ahead.
Sorry. I've come here to speak tonight as a husband, a father, and as a pastor in this community. The education system in this country was first established by the church. The focus of education was to teach people to read and write so they could understand their Bibles. They knew the only way communities flourished was by knowing God and living according to His ways. How far we have strayed from that vision. The main function of a school board is to establish a vision for the education of our young people, the future members and leaders in the community. It is to enact the policies, establish curriculum, hire staff, and prepare a budget in order to accomplish this vision. This means that what happens at these meetings determines whether our community succeeds or fails. This responsibility requires great wisdom. Wisdom looks ahead to see what our decisions bring, whether good or bad. Our culture has ignored wisdom because it has abandoned God, the one who gives it. It can't see the damage it is doing to our children, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Kids are not only exposed to things they shouldn't be, but they're being taught to deny reality and embrace lies that bring chaos, confusion, and destruction in a world without love. Our children need love. They're the most vulnerable among us. They need adults to provide for them and protect them. They need people to tell them the truth. Love rejoices with the truth and does no harm to another. Our culture knows nothing about love. It is blind, deceived, and destroying a whole generation of children. If you speak truth, it shouts you down, seeking to silence you, threatening to destroy you as well. This is exactly what is happening in this school district. If we continue to go down this path of following our culture through our policies, curriculum, and lack of wisdom in leading this community, you will rob the children of the help, protection, and the love they so desperately need. You'll think you're helping, but will show yourselves deceived, just like the culture around us. Years from now, we'll see children's lives ruined, families broken, and a community falling apart. Many will ask why nobody loved them enough to tell them the truth, and all who refuse to do so will be held accountable for it. That's the bad news. But I came tonight to bring good news. You can change course. You can lead with godly wisdom that brings healing, love, peace, joy, and hope to this community again. But to know godly wisdom, you need to know God. The good news is He has made Himself known. He sent His Son, Jesus, into this world. He sent Him for every person sitting on this board, every staff member, every parent, every student, every child in this community. Jesus came to give sight to the blind, to set people free from sin, to bind up the brokenhearted, and to give wisdom to all who ask. He is the way, the truth, and the life. God did not send His Son into this world to condemn it, but that it might be saved through Him. And I take God at His word.
Thank you very much.
I believe.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Can I have a few seconds here?
No, thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thank you. Tim Jagger. Alicia Evans thereafter. Alicia Evans will follow.
Hello, Tim Jagger, Lower Frederick. First, I wanted to reiterate my support for Policy 720 and voice my belief that Policy 103.2 should be voted down. I have no idea why this needs to be discussed or is even a topic for a school setting. School is supposed to be a safe place for children to attend and receive an education to help lead them onto a successful life. But here we are because of an incident on my daughter's first day of high school that she was extremely uncomfortable with, and school administrator's response was basically to suck it up and use the alternative single-stall restroom if she is uncomfortable. Now, There are all kinds of extreme comments about her and others online, saying everything from she made it up to I'm lying. She should just end it. She won't amount to anything with us as parents. And that's not even touching base on what is said about other kids that have spoken up against this ideology. Now, there are several people seated in front of me that seem fully vested into this gender ideology that would in fact set a precedent of validating feelings instead of facts if policy 103.2 was passed. My question to those of you is, where is the line? At what point do you say no, now that is crossing the line and can't happen? Because you sitting there and trying to advance this ideology based off of feelings opens the door to many extremes. It opens the door to anyone saying they identify as anything, and you can't question it because that is their feelings. It opens the door to the possibility that a middle-aged adult biological male can walk into the front door of the school and ask for a class schedule because he now identifies as a 15-year-old female. And what are you going to do about it? Is that where you're going to draw the line, or does it need to get more extreme before you draw a line? Because honestly, passing policy 103.2 would open the door to any and all possibilities by pushing ideology over facts. Thank you.
Alicia Evans. Michael Sheridan will follow thereafter.
Good evening, Alicia Evans, Collegeville. I attended the last policy meeting, and it was so nice to hear Mr. Fountain suggest a compromise in regards to the restrooms, because he is right. Nobody is going to get everything that they want. I am wondering why there's no mention of gender-neutral bathrooms in the language for the policy 720, since it was Mr. Fountain's recommended compromise, and it was supported almost unanimously by the policy committee. I'm excited to see policy 103.2 includes all students while still addressing the safety concerns that have been mentioned about anyone deciding they can identify as a gender at any time. I also appreciate that it covers any student who needs or desires an increased privacy when using the restroom. However, I am curious why both of these policies were brought for action tonight when the procedure is for things to go through the policy committee, and it has been the agreement at the end of last policy committee for administration to take the suggestions that were offered, bring back wording at the next policy meeting in October. I'm asking that both policies, 720 and 103, go through the proper committee, the policy committee, so that proper procedure that the board has put into place can be followed. Thank you.
Michael Sheridan, followed by Tom C. Chmielowski, maybe.
Michael Sheridan, Skippack Township. Tolerance of differences is generally a virtue. But because we tolerate differences, does not mean that we always should celebrate the differences. It does not mean that every difference should be held up for emulation. It does not mean that every difference should be copied. Adolescent onset gender dysphoria is an unhealthy condition. Underlying that condition frequently are serious psychological problems, difficulties, perhaps trauma, that should be professionally addressed. Certainly, it's not something that we should celebrate. It's not something that we should hold out to our student body, encouraging them to join it. It is something that hopefully, with proper treatment, will dissipate over time. The Perkiomen Valley School District would be better served by focusing its time, its efforts, its skills on education. Because if the school district does that, then every student, regardless of differences, will be served. Every student, regardless of differences, will be better off. I believe, and I've said this at a prior meeting, that the school administration, and by administration, I mean the paid professionals who manage the school district, the school administration did a great disservice to the students, to the teachers, to the parents, to the taxpayers, and to the volunteer board members who spend countless hours doing their best to guide the school district. The administration allowed a divisive issue to awkwardly tumble into the middle of the beginning of the school year. And unfortunately, as a result...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom C.
Tom Schmielewski, Lower Frederick. If you're part of a group or organization that tries to silence your opposition through censorship, social media bullying, physical violence, work intimidation, stalking at your people's homes, you are not anti-fascist. You are the fascist. Adults need to realize that we can agree to disagree in a civilized manner. That said, I am a district resident. I have 2 kids in the district. I'm a taxpayer, and I vote no. I vote no, not because I'm a bigot or transphobic. I vote because commingling all students together does more harm than good. We have a rare opportunity where we have a disagreement and there's a common sense solution for all of us. We can protect transgender children from violence by utilizing schools' single-stall bathrooms. We can protect the male and female students from unnecessary risks. Let's take a step back and look at what's happened to our kids, what could be causing it, and what's coming to the future. So these kids were one of the first kids to be masked in the country. They're one of the last to be unmasked. The books in this library contain sexually explicit material, AKA pornography. And we have them commingling in the bathrooms. When kids are protesting and it's staged, the local news is tipped off and they're coming in, there's helicopters flying above them. We have the mainstream media coming in and looking at our kids. What's going on? I mean, the mainstream media has talked more about these kids' issues than they have Epstein's Island. Yeah, we need to put this into perspective. So we need to realize that our kids are being targeted. They're being targeted by do-nothing politicians, treating our kids like lab rats, trying to divide us into a perpetual argument for an upcoming election. We need to be smarter than this. We need to come together, put our politics aside. This is obviously part of this. We need to come together again for the kids. There's a common sense solution on the table, and that is for transgender students to use the single-stall bathrooms. This does the greatest good for the greatest number for the longest amount of time. Let's look where this is going. Colleges and universities have started to commingle dormitory facilities. 7 million females go to college every year. 15% of them report being raped. That's 1 million females. If you say yes to this bill, you are absolutely increasing their risk to be raped. Maybe not now, but maybe later on. 1 million, that's the number of people that died from COVID in the US. So I ask you, where is your abundance of caution now? We need to push back, solve this at a local level. We do not need to increase the risk of our female students to make transgender students feel safe. We can accomplish both by having transgender students utilize single-stall bathrooms. Thank you.
Deborah Leonetti, followed by Stephanie Ott.
Hi, I'm Debbie Leonetti, Skippack Township. Thank you for letting me speak. First of all, I want to thank all of the school board members for volunteering your time. You have a very difficult decision to make, but please remember, some of the hardest decisions are the right ones. I've been attending school board meetings for several months now. I began coming to the meetings after I heard about the pornography that was found in our library. This is a can that's been kicked down the road and the books are still here. Now we find ourselves in a situation that we're being watched by our nation, and in some cases, the world. We're going to be setting an example. I'm asking you to move forward as soon as possible and pass Policy 720 so we can get back to teaching our kids. Who would have thought our little school district would be covered by news outlets and blasted out all over social media? I want to thank all the kids who participated in the walkout. There would have been many more, but they were afraid of the consequences. They stood up and peacefully protested, one of our rights in this country. Let's go over the highlights, shall we? Right after school began, there was a communication sent from the principal, Dr. Moss, that students in PV were allowed to use whichever bathroom they identify with. Soon after that, a student reports she's uncomfortable in the bathroom and suspects a boy has entered while she was in there. She is told to use the single-stall bathroom. This opens the door to the community that there isn't a clear locker room or bathroom policy. Who thought we would need one? At the school board meeting on September 11th, we are told that there is a policy, Policy 103, that was apparently passed in 2018. Policy 103 states that students can use a bathroom they identify with. At that meeting, Policy 720 is proposed and an emergency vote cast. It doesn't pass. September 15th, a group of students plan a walkout in support of female students that are most affected by the open bathroom locker room policy. Many students are told they wouldn't be able to play sports, etc., if they participated. To me, that is intimidation and has no place in our school. Parents are told not to show up. This is public property. Parents are always allowed on school grounds. The walkout is covered nationally and internationally. Many other schools are watching because they are dealing with the same issues. September 19th, the policy meeting. We are informed that Policy 103 also bleeds into the locker rooms and sports, meaning boys who identify as girls can play on girls' teams and vice versa. Comments were held at the end of the meeting, and it was adjourned because parents lost their cool. September 21, bomb threat to PV. Surprisingly, a reporter at the Pottstown Mercury had somehow landed inside information about this email or letter that was sent. Kids were dismissed from school. This same day, death threats are sent to a few school board members. There were text messages sent from some parents threatening to show up at certain board members' houses. Some board members' locations were shared on the internet.
Thank you very much. Stephanie Ott, followed by Ed McGuire.
Good evening, Stephanie Ott, Perkiomen Township. The students' walkout was a beautiful expression of their First Amendment right. The students stood for truth and did so in a respectful and peaceful manner, wanting to keep males and females in their respective bathrooms and locker rooms, to protect our girls, keeping them safe. I know as an adult I would not want to enter a bathroom and find a biological male in that space. So why should we allow this for our precious children? We are not about hate. We want what is best and safe for the entire student body. The students that choose to identify differently have single-stall bathrooms provided for them. Our school district is full of excellent teachers. However, we have a few teachers who feel it is their right to initiate conversation within the open classroom, encouraging students to question their identity. The pre-adolescent years are challenging. Their bodies are going through change. I think we all can agree that these young people need reassurance that what is occurring in their bodies is okay and natural. What they don't need is staff giving false information, implying that they might want to consider another gender identity. Our young people deserve better. Above all, parents need to be involved in these discussions. This really is a call for action for people to get out and vote. Vote for those who stand for their values for such a time as this.
Ed McGuire. Ed McGuire. Followed by Gail Moore.
Hi, Edward McGuire, Perkiomen Township. I naively walked in here looking to advocate for full-day kindergarten and was like, wow, I didn't realize it was such a controversial topic. I'm still going to advocate for full-day kindergarten. That's why I came here. I think the presentation was incredibly compelling. Some of you might remember that I did run for school board a few years ago myself, and actually was running because I wanted to advocate for full-day kindergarten, so I'm glad to see that it's coming to pass, and I hope the board votes in favor of it, and we institute it in time for my son to attend full-day kindergarten. Thank you.
Gail Moore. Followed by Jeremy Moore. He already did.
Yeah.
That was the. Yes. It just happened. It just clicked. Thank you. So hold on one second.
Yeah.
Followed by Delaney Reed.
Thank you. Gail Sabo Moore, Lower Frederick Township. I just wanted to say that I have listened to the board meeting and appreciate all of you and your insight, but what I think you don't realize is how you're affecting the students. So I have 2 girls and 2 boys. The problem that I do see is that I do want to protect my daughters, and that's very important, but I also have sons. So I'm very disgusted with how you're bashing the young gentlemen in this school. So there have been some women here that have said that they're all rapists. I don't appreciate that because we have strong men and strong women in this school district. And I think that you are now sending a message to these young students that if they're a male, they're bad, and if they're a female, they're weak. So that's all I have to say, but I just think you need to really consider how you're projecting your viewpoints to our young students of our future.
Delaney Reed. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir. Anyone else, if you would like to speak, if you could start heading your way down, that way we have an orderly transition. Otherwise, we'll just move on.
Hi, board. My name is Dan Kelly. I'm a resident of Collegeville Borough. So, Fountain, I wasn't here, but I did hear about the recommendations you had. I work in real estate myself. So, in real estate, we have special modifications and special accommodations. This comes down to a special accommodation. So, it's not to be, assimilated by the masses. It comes down to who has the need. So if I had an elderly person come in or a disabled person, they would ask for a parking space closer to their apartment. Fine. I don't have to give them every single parking space close to their apartment. I'd be required to give them a special accommodation to help them. I think that's a kind of a simple thing for all of us, and I do regret not being here in the past to speak up. I was one of, I think someone said an alpha. I'm one of the alphas that coaches our kids in sports. Not for toxic masculinity. I coach them because I want to help them in their whole lives. Become better team players, become better citizens of society. All the benefits that come from sports, but I couldn't be here in the past, and I allowed many, many people from the other side to make decisions for my children. I won't stand for that any longer. My peers won't stand for that any longer. Thank you.
I'm Katie Wilson of Perkiomen Township, and I'd just like to make a quick point that most of your children walked out because they wanted to skip class, not because they cared. And they admitted it too, so end of argument there. Thank you for letting me speak. First, I wanted to say a few things. I'm 17, I'm a senior here at PV. This is the last year of what I consider my childhood. And let me say, I could be anywhere right now, but I feel the need to be here to protect the people I love and the people that you are so opposed to. Standing in front of a room of closed-minded people is terrifying, but I would face any fear of mine to save my friends and to save my people. I want to say this to everyone. Why is this so focused on only girls being raped and sexually assaulted? I'm asking this as a cisgender girl to all of you. Why are we not considering cisgender boys in these scenarios? In my opinion, if you're going to fight for one side, fight for both, because boys get raped, boys get sexually assaulted, boys get sexually harassed and sexually abused. You will not be stopping any further sexual crimes from happening in these bathrooms because you're limiting the use of who can use those bathrooms. Another thing, I mean, this isn't really another thing, it's just what I was saying. This isn't just boys harassing girls. Girls sexually harass girls. Boys can sexually harass boys. Like I said the last time I spoke, I've been sexually harassed twice by 2 cisgendered people. One a boy and one a girl. I want you guys to think about the people you love. The people you love whom are part of a minority. Maybe it's your friend who is a person of color. Maybe it's your son with autism. I guarantee you know someone who is part of a minority. Think about them going to school or work and having their safety threatened by the people who they want to feel protected by. That is not a good feeling, and that's how these kids in this school are feeling. This isn't your lives being affected. You guys are older, you grew up in a different generation. The kids in our high school today are not like you. Half the kids walking out, like I said, walked out to get out of class, not support this policy. You need to look out for the younger, more vulnerable kids of this generation who are discriminated against and bullied because they are a part of a minority. Your job is to protect the students, not your political beliefs. Prove to us that you actually care. This is coming from someone who went to church for about 10 years of my life. This is not a religious school. This is a public school. We cannot bring religion into the safety of our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go, you'll go next, then the guy in the eagle shirt will go next.
Jason, were you going to throw the people out that were saying stuff behind my daughter's back?
Go ahead, ma'am.
We're not going to address that.
Okay, my name is Magdalena Rus from Berkhamen. God put the government on the earth to preserve and protect human dignity, not to deduct on my how to live. Government are not allowed to say to me how I should live and how I should treat my children and what to teach my children. This is not the rights of the government. You are not a God. Only God can tell me how to live and what to do. So you are there by God to protect me and to protect my rights. As an Orthodox Church, an Orthodox Christian, I am not accept all the policy. If this policy is against teaching on my Jesus, I will never accept it. I don't care if that come from the highest authority. I can't afford to lose my kingdom. I cannot, but the moment I lose him, I'm gone. Woke up, America. Thank you.
So we're going to go eagle shirt, then ma'am, you can go next, and then gentleman in red.
Okay, eagle shirt, Jim Bruni, Perkiomen Township. I had 3 children go through PV, and so I'm here to give a big picture look at what's going on in my view. We live in the greatest country in the world. Our Constitution was written in 1787 and serves as the backbone of America. The framers included checks and balances that hold all 3 branches of government accountable to their given power, while protecting both state and individual liberties. I believe our current federal, state, and local leaders are treating our Constitution like a suggestion box. There's many examples, and at the local level, we have board members not standing with their hand on their heart, saying the Pledge of Allegiance. We have school boards approving mask mandates for our students, which cause severe learning capabilities and handicap the generation of students. We have school boards allowing the teaching of critical race theory in schools, designed to indoctrinate students to believe systemic racism is part of the fabric of America. School boards allowing pornographic books not suitable for younger adults, and even worse, children in our school libraries. School boards allowing boys access to girls' bathrooms that led to, as we know, sexual assaults of an innocent girl because they claim to be transgender or gender confused. So I asked myself, Why did this start happening on or around January 20th of 2021, the day this current Democratic administration assumed power? All of these terrifying instances are happening today in schools all over this great country under the watch of school boards like you. Every one of these circumstances are not happening by chance, but they're systematically planned by the party currently in power for one reason, and I believe that's to destroy our country. What you are voting for is part of that diabolical plan to turn this country into the next China, Cuba, or Venezuela, where freedoms and liberties are gone. Do you want that for your children and their children and their children's children? Because that's where we're heading. I am currently reading a book that accurately outlines exactly what is happening right now. It's this book right here. And that book is called The Democratic Party Hates America. So I please ask yourself, do you hate America or do you love America? These people behind me, I believe most of them love America, and I ask you to do the right thing and save our country. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Luita Dave. I'm a sophomore here. I'll be honest, talking up here is terrifying, especially in this auditorium in comparison to the library. But nonetheless, you know, I had no intention of speaking, but I feel like there are some things that need to be said. I thought for the longest time that I lived in the sleepy town of Collegeville, where we passed things like full-day kindergarten, which, by the way, awesome, love it. I've got to say, the students this year, it's been great for us. Well, majority of the time other than the adults, the parents. You know, starting off school with a bomb threat over bathrooms? Are you kidding me? Okay, number one, a bomb threat. Why? You impacted not only our high school students, but our elementary school students. I have a younger sister. I was terrified for her. We had no idea what was going on, and at this point, this is extreme. There's no reason for this to be happening at all, whatsoever. We've come to a point at this time where we have so much divide, where there are parents screaming at each other. There's horrendous things being said on social media. It's unnecessary, to say the least. Thank you.
Hi, Leo DeRosier. I'm a resident in Collegeville Borough. I came tonight because I want to talk about full day K. That's why I was here. I'm happy that it's back after 5 years, because I remember when I had my daughter and she was just about ready to enter kindergarten, it came up and it didn't pass. But so I know you want to talk to other districts that have full day K. I mean, Norristown, Methacton, Wissahickon, North Penn, Souderton, Pottsgrove, Pottstown, Upper Perk, Upper Dublin, Abington, Cheltenham, Jenkintown, Upper and Lower Moreland, Hatboro, Horsham, Centennial, Upper and Lower Marion, and Phoenixville. You have lots of places to ask about how to do a good full day K program. And I guess since it's the topic of the evening, I real quick put a couple thoughts together. I know some people will say, like, no one's doctors. I'm not a doctor. I know none of us are. But the people who are, the American Medical Association, the American Psychiatric Association, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychology all agree that gender-affirming care is clinically appropriate and can be life-saving treatment for children and adults. One thing I did want to bring up is that this feels like a parent issue. Like, the students that are here and have chosen to speak tonight, you get a good feeling of where their hearts are on the issue. The parents seem to be driving the issue and driving the arguments back and forth between the two policies. And the only thing I could say is it'd be interesting if you can pass both policies, 103.2 and 720, because in 103.2 there's a non-discrimination agreement at the bottom, so you can't discriminate against non-gender conforming or transgender students, and then you're going to discriminate against them by forcing them to do things. And I feel that there is a lack of cohesion, because I know someone said that their daughter felt bad they had to go use the other bathroom. Well, think about how all the other students feel when they're stuck using what doesn't feel safe or right to them. So it's just, we have one good instance there, and then there's that. I can't speak about the walkout or who attended, but I can say about for the students that are here and that were able to voice their opinions here to you tonight. So I think that speaks volumes on its own. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Just so I can, does anyone else wish to speak? So, okay, so you'll be the last speaker. Hi, are you coming up to speak as well? Yes. Anyone else want to speak? Do we have other speakers? All right, we got 2 speakers left. There you go.
Thanks. Hi. I'm Jean Dandois from TRAP. I've talked in front of the board a couple times, and a lot of times the way I approach it is somebody talked about being in real estate. I'm in industry. I work in the pharma industry. And what I would say is I don't think we're thinking about how we're preparing our kids for the future. Because let me tell you, when you work in a Fortune 100 or Fortune 500 company, which I think most of us would really love for our children to have in the future, there are anti-discrimination policies. You cannot harass people. Our companies have insurance that cover gender-affirming care because it is real, and because our employees are not at risk from people who are transitioning. There might be a few specific incidences that were cited earlier, but the data overwhelmingly supports that those people are not committing crimes of violence. Those people are having crimes of violence committed against them. So when you talk about protecting your children, and I understand wanting to protect your children, first of all, there's not really a safety issue. And second of all, when they get out in the real world, when they go to college, when they're working at a company, they are not going to be able to complain about somebody using the bathroom that makes them, they're like, oh, maybe they don't look feminine enough. I'm not okay with that. That's going to be a problem for them. They're going to be the one in front of HR being reviewed, going through unconscious bias and being trained and possibly being disciplined if they continue to discriminate and harass people who don't conform with how they think somebody should look. So you're really not getting your kids ready for the real world if you want them to be in these types of companies. And I'm telling you, these companies are not doing it because they're woke or they're liberal or they're democratic. They're doing it, first of all, because it's the law. And they're doing it, second of all, because they need to have a workplace where everybody feels safe and people aren't discriminated against and people aren't harassed, whether it's based on their gender identity, their sex, their color, their race, their religion, whatever. So I think when we're talking about this now, we're in this little microcosm of this school, and we're supposed to be preparing our kids for the future, and we should be having discussions with our children to let them know, whether you like it or not, it's not 1950, and we're not going back there. And there might be steps backward, but progress is happening, and there was a time when we never would have thought we would have a black president. There was a time when you never would have thought gay marriage was legal. Those things are progressing because people deserve to be happy and people deserve to live the life they want to live. And by ramping all this vitriol up on both sides, you're not serving our children well and you're not preparing them for the future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Johnson, Shrinksville. I never come up here, but I'm going to just because there were several things said that I just feel like I've got to speak to. First and foremost, for the gentleman that spoke about how all these doctors and therapists and pediatric associations and things like that are all for the gender affirming care. The reason why they are saying that is because therapists and doctors are being penalized and are being told by their companies, don't make waves. This is the new model. There is absolutely no research. In fact, there is research that actually shows that that is counterproductive. That is antithetical to the therapeutic process. As therapists, we do not affirm our patients' mental illness. We look at, why are you feeling that way? What's going on? What are the traumas in your history? Gender affirming care touches none of that. It is simply, they come in, you immediately affirm. And people, doctors, therapists, healthcare providers are being pushed to say, you will lose your job, and in some states, you will lose your license if you do anything different. Sweden's already done this. There are plenty of studies that show that this is absolutely damaging. So that would be one thing that I would say. I have 4 children that have gone through PV, 3 that are in currently. I have been absolutely appalled at the things that have been pushed here, starting with the masks, and now we're moving into this bathroom situation. Like, I feel like it is absolutely appropriate to put in a no bullying, period, end of story. I don't care if you were bullied for being heavy, being different, having different color hair, no bullying. I had children that were bullied mercilessly. I have gone to administrator after administrator and nothing, because they didn't fit in this group that said, we protect this group, we do not protect this group. I was actually told when my child one of my children finally came to his principal, that she believed half of his story and half of his bully story. So I came to her and I said, would you say that to a sex abuse victim? Oh, of course not. No, I wouldn't. Well, then why in the world would you say that in front of the bully and my child? It blows my mind. We have so much to learn here.
Thank you very much. Student liaison report was already given. I'm going to defer my president's report to next week. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone else want to talk? All right.
I'm just going to be really fast.
Sure.
That's it. All I just want to say is we're not here whether to argue.
Have to announce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Heather Wilson, Perkiomen Township.
Thank you.
We're not here to argue whether somebody being trans is okay or not with your Jesus. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about bathrooms. We're here to talk about making sure that everybody is safe, including girls and boys and trans and whoever. I don't know how this became about religion. I don't know why we're talking about Jesus. I don't know why any of this is happening. That's not what we're here for. I also don't appreciate that you didn't stop somebody from harassing my daughter when she was speaking. And I also don't appreciate the way that you are also laughing at other people. It's embarrassing.
All right. Student liaison report was already given. President's report, I'll defer to next week. Dr. Russell, do you have a superintendent's report?
I do.
All
Thank
right.
you. So I have just a couple of topics tonight that I would like to call out. They're listed on my points of interest here. We want to talk about Monday, which is an Act 80 day. That's a day off of school for students. This month's recognitions, some showcasing of our students, and then a transition. So Monday is an Act 80 day, and school districts in the Commonwealth can apply for an Act 80 day, which is actually a day off of school for students, but a day of work for staff, and it counts towards the 180 days of school. The 2 Act 80 days that we currently have in our calendar are dedicated to professional development. So Monday is that first day, really, our first Act 80 day, of this school year. The second one will occur on November 7th. So it's a day off of school for our students. These are some of the activities that our teachers and our staff will be engaged in. Very focused on curriculum, all different subject areas in the areas of curriculum, wellness activities, structured literacy, which is again about that science of reading and some of the new ways of thinking about literacy instruction coming out of the Pennsylvania Department of Education. We do a lot of review of our data and consideration for the responses to the data. There will be discussions held on Monday around those topics, as well as opportunities to have conversations with me by level and share what's on your mind. So looking forward to that. No school for students. I'm guessing they're looking forward to that too. So this month, there's a couple of different recognitions I'll call out, and the first one is Principal Appreciation Month, and there are 12 principals represented here, and if you can identify the emoji and the principal, you get a prize, just for fun. Anyway, thanks to our principals, just keeping it light, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to our principals for all that they do. They are appreciated as they lead our schools, and all 12 are represented there. Thanks to them for feeling brave enough to share those emojis, and for Dr. Parr, she put this together. Very cute. It's also Bullying Stops Here. It's a national, thank you. It's a national bullying prevention, it is National Bullying Prevention Month. So some different focus areas, just a couple examples here on the right. We do focus on respectful interactions and anti-bullying approaches through our positive school-wide systems, through restorative practices, through holding our students accountable under the Code of Conduct. There are some greater areas of emphasis during the month of October. There is a Unity Day that comes up later this month that several of our schools celebrate. So know that while this is always a focus, there is a greater focus during the month of October, as there is a wider Bullying Stops Here. It's a National Bullying Prevention Month that's celebrated across the country. It's also Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we have Mr. Ganesh to thank for some of the cybersecurity measures that are in place. He helps us to practice through phishing campaigns and maintain an awareness of unsafe emails or ones with attachments that could be detrimental. He helps us to know we need to change our passwords pretty regularly, and we have now implemented two-factor authentication. So again, to increase security and protect the safety of our students and staff in some different ways, but also a focus this month. So thanks to him for his efforts as well as his team. So let me showcase our students. Drew left, but he was a member of the court. Friday night was the homecoming, the annual homecoming football game against Smith Acton. We won, that was great. But these are the five couples that were recognized as part of the court, and our student representative, Drew, who was here a few minutes ago, was there. And it was Casey and Cody that were awarded royalty, as it's called. So they celebrated as our homecoming royalty 2023. And there was a dance that followed up Saturday night. And as Drew mentioned, seemed to be a good time had by all. I'll also mention that these are the orchestra students who have qualified for the Honors String Orchestra Festival. That'll be held in November. Yes, yay to them. Wonderful job on the part of our students. You can see their names and their grade levels. We have some young individuals that have qualified, so some more to look forward to after this year. But congratulations to them as well for their efforts and their dedication to this art. It's not easy to qualify for this festival. So lastly, I'm going to recognize a transition. You want to illustrate a big impact, you use a big image or two. That's a saying. So Dr. Laurie Smith has recently announced that she will now serve as the superintendent of schools in the Upper Dublin School District. Congratulations, Dr. Smith. That is fantastic for you. And I said in my little message to the community, we're really excited for Dr. Smith. We're not so excited for us, but really, truly, congratulations. Thanks for all that you have contributed to Perkiomen Valley. You truly made a big impact, and we wish you only the best as you prepare to transition. Dr. Smith's resignation is on the agenda for this month, and she will be transitioning to Upper Dublin by December 4th. That's when she'll start, and she'll be seated there, and we wish her well. So that ends my report.
Very much. Mr. Subers, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Any board members have any district or committee reports? Dr. Kolar?
So I sit on the board of the PV Foundation, and I just wanted to make a little plug that the foundation is looking for some new members. Anybody can be a member of the foundation as long as you live in the district. For those of you who don't really know what we do, we fundraise to provide grants to applicants throughout the district, usually teachers, to fund projects that maybe the district isn't able to fund at the moment, or maybe something that's a little bit out of the box and they want to try something different. Some of the things that we've recently done is help fund the esports program by some of the panels that are in the classrooms. There's a great trout in the classroom program. Those are all things that were funded by the foundation. So just wanted to make a little plug that we're looking for some new members. The next meeting is October 24th. You can get information on the website. If you don't have to commit, you can just come check it out and then see if it's something you would like to do.
Thank you very much. Any other board members? All right, the consent agenda is presented, and we'll move on to governance. Dr. Kolar?
Thank you, Mr. Saylor. Just going to scroll down here. Okay, so item 901 is the first reading on policies. The following policies are presented for first reading: 822, 006, 216.1, 251, 006.3. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we can move those to second reading. Item 902 will be a motion to approve an exception to Board Policy 204, attendance as presented. Any comments or questions? We'll move that to consent. 903 is already on consent, as is 904. I'm going to suggest that for 905 and 906, we open it up for discussion, because I think that both policies are a similar topic, and it would be helpful to have a discussion before we take action on either one of those. Is that okay with the board?
That's fine. Anyone have any discussion?
I can start. Oh, go ahead. So I thought I would start out by just explaining the rationale behind why Mrs. Evans-Brockett and I introduced the policy 103.2. One of the things that I was listening to during all the public comment was the idea that the current policy 103 as it stands was not specific enough, and people were taken aback that it applied to bathrooms. And looking back on that, I can see how maybe that wasn't really specified, and people were not aware that it allowed students to use the bathroom for the gender that they identified with. So I thought it might be helpful to expand on that policy a little bit. The other thing was, I felt like when we were hearing about the rationale behind policy 720, what kept coming up over and over again is that this is not an anti-transgender policy, it's a safety issue. And so I've really thought long and hard about, okay, what are the safety issues and how can we address those? The comment that kept coming up repeatedly was, well, if we have this open policy, then at any moment a boy could decide, I identify as a girl today, and use that bathroom. Or, you know, people will go back and forth and decide, today I feel like using the girls' bathroom, today I feel like using the boys' bathroom. So one of the things that policy 103.2 states is that you can't just decide that day you're going to use that bathroom. It's about using the bathroom of the gender that you consistently identify with. So to me, I felt like that was a good compromise from saying, we're not saying this is an open door policy, we're not talking about co-ed bathrooms, we're saying that you use the bathroom for the gender that you consistently identify with, which I felt was more specific and maybe would give people a greater sense of safety. And then along with that, with safety, my big concern was if we went as far as policy 720, now what we're talking about is a female might be in the female bathroom, and somebody who's biologically female but presents as male, maybe dressed as male, identifies as male, that person would now be in that bathroom. And how is that providing safety for either one of them? You know, this all started because a girl was in the bathroom and felt uncomfortable because someone she thought might have been male walked in. So now we're increasing the incidence of those types of things happening. So to me, 720 didn't really address these safety issues that kept coming up over and over again. So that's why I tried to come up with something that would maybe be more of a compromise. I don't think it's perfect. I think they both need work. My desire actually would be that both of these policies go back to policy committee meetings and we talk about them more, but since 720 was put on the agenda for today, I felt like it was important to put something in there that truly did address some of the safety issues that have come up, and that was my rationale behind that. I'll kind of leave it at that for now, and I would like to hear from Mr. Fountain particularly because you were at the policy meeting, and I wanted to come up with a compromise to maybe why you felt like 720 was ready to be back on the agenda, and also Mr. Dorr, I believe you wanted to speak to that. So I kind of want to share my side. I'd also like to hear from others in terms of why 720 might be the better policy.
Thank you. So I appreciate the effort to put 103.2 out there. My concerns with it is it's subjective. And it's subjective because gender identity is still something that's relatively, I mean, it's growing in scope. If you go to healthline.com, it's a website, a pretty prominent website that shows the definitions of genders. If you go there to their archives in 2018, they list 3 genders with 3 definitions. I went there this morning at 10 o'clock. There was now 68 genders. So to me, 103 it's an untenable policy. It's too subjective. So that's what worries me. And what Dr. Kohler just said, well, it has to be someone who identifies regularly. Well, there are people that are gender fluid that change their gender daily, weekly, monthly. I mean, so we're already putting a guardrail in that policy on that. So it's been a long couple of weeks for all of us. I watched the policy committee. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but it's obvious this is a very hot button issue. It's obvious that people are scared, people are angry, people are, social media are attacking everyone. I thought that bathroom policy was the best thing to do. I work in healthcare. I cover hospitals from Philadelphia to Maine. They all are dealing with the bathroom issue. What they did was they took every single stall bathroom, they turned them into gender-neutral bathrooms, and every multi-stall bathroom is now men's and ladies' rooms. I thought that solution, if it's working for every hospital in the Northeast, would work at Perkiomen Valley, alleviating some of the fears. We had one community member who said this wasn't a problem in 2018. Well, it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't a problem in 2018. But with that email that went out a couple weeks ago, I didn't know. People didn't know that that was the official policy of the school district. So it's a problem now, and it's a problem for a lot of the families. Both sides who got up and spoke. To me, this is the best compromise, which is why I think it's something we need to immediately do. And that's my thoughts on that.
Any other discussions?
Yeah. Me?
Sure.
In response to what Mr. Dorr just said and what your questions were, when he and I had spoken about it at the committee or the policy committee meeting, you had heard me say that I think that this needs to have some kind of a compromise. A compromise is something where nobody is going to get everything that they want, but they will get some parts of it. What I had suggested at that point in time was what I had thought might be a good compromise when Mr. Dorr and I had spoken about the idea of opening up all the individual bathrooms. That actually felt like an even better compromise. And in part because it also allows for hearing the voices of some of those students that we really never hear the voices of. We've got students in this building right now that are dealing with extreme anxiety. They're not going to come out and speak, but that also is a group that could possibly benefit from the ability to use a single bathroom. You also have students that have body dysmorphia, that are not comfortable in their own bodies. That is another area. So I think that a lot of the areas, a lot of the students would be able to benefit from this probably better than I think in any other compromise that we could come up with. That's why I had suggested with Mr. Dorr that I think that this is a good compromise policy.
Dr. Cantley, Ms. White.
So bear with me, I have quite a few thoughts on everything. You know, I know that I emailed the board already with concerns about this. At the end of the day, this is, again, as I said last time, something that we have not ironed out the nuts and bolts. Dr. Russell emailed with a ton of questions in her memo, suggesting and asking, how do we unroll this? How do we even implement it? We don't have any of the nuts and bolts, and yet we send it to policy, and then we're just gonna decide, oh, well, we think we came up with a compromise, so we're gonna put it back on the agenda. It's not the way it works. There's procedures in policy committee for a reason. Quite frankly, I'm in agreement with Dr. Kohler. Neither one should be on for tonight. They should be in policy committee. There's clearly feelings on both sides, and it needs to be hashed out. I had sent a very extensive list to Dr. Russell about ways to look and to consider both sides of the spectrum in order to support all students. Because at the end of the day, I'm Christian, but I'm not going to put my Christianity and my beliefs on someone who is Jewish, on someone who is Muslim. I'm not going to sit here in a public school and expect that everyone is going to have to abide by what I've been brought up with in my faith. Which, by the way, in my faith, we believe that transgender individuals are individuals who should be treated without judgment and treated in a way that they can access everything just like anybody else. And it's a public school. We are abiding by laws that govern public school. Title IX is part of something that we have to consider. Again, this does not consider Title IX. It does not bring into the fact that we're going to be in lawsuits. Something else that came up was people keep saying it's gender-neutral bathrooms. This is not talking about gender-neutral bathrooms. This is talking about a small number of students having access to a bathroom of the gender that they identify with. If we're so concerned about rape and sexual assault and harassment on girls, which, by the way, a student said it doesn't have to be just girls, it goes both ways. We need to be talking to our students about what is consent? How do we treat people with respect? How do we not put ourselves on someone else and sexually assault them? If we're so afraid of sexual assault, why are we not teaching the people that we're scared of? Why are we putting the onus on women? Oh, women are scared and so we're just going to say the boys are bad? I'm sorry. I have a son. I don't teach him that he can go up and touch a girl in any way he wants to. There's the idea of consent. So that is not even an issue that should be part of this bathroom policy. The other thing that we need to think about is this idea of gender dysphoria. I just want to put it out there. I'm a psychologist. Nobody's twisting my arms to do gender affirming care. I do gender affirming care because it's what research has shown us works. Gender affirming care is something that we do for students because we know it mitigates larger risks like gender dysphoria, which typically is something that occurs when a student is not encountering a supportive environment or are that depressed because of how they're being treated by people around them. Suicidal ideation increases when we don't do gender affirming care. We also have risk of substance abuse when we don't have gender affirming care. And it's a public school. You can shake your heads all you want, but there are ways that we can meet in the middle. This is not meeting in the middle. As I said, I gave a very extensive list to Dr. Russell of things that can be done, and things that can be done that can even handle the fact that we have vaping, bullying, and drug use in the bathrooms. But we don't want to sit and talk about it. We just want to go with where we want to go. This needs to be a conversation. There are too many feelings and emotions that were driving us instead of being able to sit down and look, how can we meet the needs of every single student under the law of a public school system? And I'm sorry, Mr. Fountain and Mr. Dorr, you both were wrong to put it on the agenda when it was in policy. And unfortunately then, we had two more that felt that they needed to add it as a way to, like, let's try and figure out a way to meet in the middle. And then that's what happens. So what's the next issue that comes up? Are we going to have Mr. Saylor and Ms. Mayers throw something on, and then I'm going to throw something on, and it's going to be this constant where we just throw crap on because we don't want to meet in policy? Come on, people, get back to procedure. Neither one of these should be on here. They should both go back.
Ms. White?
So I sit on the policy committee, and Mr. Fountain, I know that you were appointed to run the policy committee meeting. I think that was sort of an unprecedented ask. I think that it was pretty strategic in having you run the meeting, although I will say that I was appreciative of you running the meeting because I felt like we actually had constructive conversation for the first time in 2 years at that meeting. And I really came to that meeting open-minded with good faith, and I think we had a very good conversation to try to listen to both sides of this issue. I came to that meeting focusing on safety. I wordsmithed the policy 720 as it had been previously presented. We had discussed that. Ultimately, we didn't go down the road of wordsmithing the policy and rewriting the policy during committee. We went on your suggestion and recommendation with, I felt you were very genuine in saying that you wanted the best for all kids, and that really spoke to me, and I really appreciated that we were finally moving to a place where that actually could happen. And so what I don't understand is the reasoning of not letting what you've asked for and advocated and we all came to agreement about play out to allow for administration to really bring back solutions in October. I don't understand that piece of how this is all kind of worked through. And so one of the things that I would have put forward had we gone through the line by line of the policy, as we do and we always did in policy, was about the fact that the definitions within policy 720, to me, if it's truly about safety, don't reflect the safety issues that are actually happening for our students in the buildings. And so in order for policy 720 to actually reflect that safety, we would all have to be under the assumption that all of the male students in our buildings and anyone that identifies potentially as male, if they are a transgender male, are pedophiles, or they're not pedophiles because they are children. We're talking about children here, that they're predators. And so what I don't understand is how, as a group of adults that are in charge of making sure that children are protected, would approach a problem, a supposed problem, with the notion that there is a group of students in our buildings that are predatory. And so given because of what you do for a living and your background, Mr. Fountain, which I hugely respect, and we are very lucky to have professionals in the field of mental health at this table, of which I am not one, I think that you would agree that with the statistics of abuse survivors and those that are actually enduring abuse actively in our buildings, being 1 in 5 for sexual abuse, for example, the number of those abused individuals and those survivor individuals that were actually abused by someone who is gender dysmorphic, non-binary, trans man, trans woman, I would have to say it's probably close to 0. And so I can't put into words how strongly I feel about the amount that needs to be done in terms of educating not just the student body, but also the community about the actual safety risks around predatory behavior. Because as a survivor, I think that it becomes extremely triggering to assume that a minority group of students will somehow be a risk or somehow be a burden or a threat to my child or any other child in this building, any of our buildings, any of our school district, anywhere in this country. And the idea that protecting the least among us from a national standpoint is somehow an agenda or somehow indoctrination. We're talking about humans, humanity, and we're talking about children in this particular instance. So all of those ideas and all of those thoughts are what I put into actually looking at safety and Policy 720. And I was with you. I thought, you know what? Let's see what administration can bring us. Let's try to get over the divide of this is my camp and this is my camp. Let's come together. We're tired. It's tiring. Every day is tiring. Tomorrow, we'll all be exhausted. It's like a PTSD situation, legitimately. No exaggeration, full stop. So, I'm sorry, I hear.
First of all, come to order. I can't hear that because I'm listening to Ms. White. So I can't hear the grumbling because
I hear the grumbling.
Okay, hold on. I can't hear it, so I'm listening. Everyone, if you just watch the meeting, that's fine. Go ahead.
So I am asking you, Mr. Fountain, to continue on the path of reason and allow for this to play out in good faith and allow our educators and the professionals that we put our children in their hands to let them do their jobs. Let them do their jobs and bring solutions to us so we can make informed decisions and write policy for them to execute. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to just make a few comments myself. So October 17th of 2017, PSBA recommended that policy 248, which was our discrimination policy and harassment policy, morph into 103, one policy. That policy was discussed October 17th of 2017 to April 17th of 2018. The addition of gender identification into policy 103 was not a recommendation of PSBA. It was not a recommendation of PNN. It was a recommendation of one board member who was on the board at that time to change policy 103 in the first paragraph to include gender identification. That one little change was discussed for 1 month, and then the policy was approved. That didn't come from PSBA or PNN. It came from internal Perkiomen Valley School Board, and at that time, we were the only school district in Montgomery County that had the term gender identification in policy 103. And to this day, there are still school districts in Montgomery County that do not have that. I was disappointed to hear a board member say that Mr. Fountain's comments or comments thereafter policy were considered vomit, and the recommendations to remove all the urinals from boys' rooms as a way to make inclusive bathrooms not a logical expense for taxpayers to spend to make this functionally work. My concern is that when we're talking about this, we're trying to use terms like all students, and we're trying to use terms like everyone needs to be inclusive. I was asked to meet this morning with a local politician who told me that the only way I could identify that politician's gender is if he stood up and pulled down his pants to show me. And I find comments like that to be just literally nonsensical, and it takes away from the serious conversation that we're trying to have when we're talking about our locker rooms or we're talking about our bathrooms. So I have stated from the very beginning that I am in favor of having biological sex as our policy. I think the reason we need to have that policy is because I don't believe the theory that because policy 103 includes gender identification, that everyone knew that included bathrooms and locker rooms and potentially PIAA, depending on what the principal says. I just don't believe that actually happened because there's no conversation. In the 5 months the policy was discussed, not one time did that conversation ever come up. What I think is important is that we'll note that for policy 103, it was discussed for 6 months. At the very last meeting, at the end of the meeting, one word was changed that dramatically changed that policy, and it quickly went directly to first read. And when we talk about where things come from, that didn't come from PNN and that didn't come from PSBA. It came from exactly what we were talking about. And so when we talk about policy 720, when we talk about opening up every single one-on-one bathroom, I think that's something that I'm in favor of. And when we talk about Title IX and we talk about laws, we have to remember the oath of office that we all took as a board member, that we would swear or affirm to support, obey, defend the Constitution of the United States and of that Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and discharge those duties of the office with fidelity. That does not mean with fiat. That does not mean with executive order. Unfortunately, we live in a republic right now where our elected leaders think that legislation is through executive order. I'll sign an executive order. So President Obama signs an executive order on Title IX. Then President Trump comes in and he removes that executive order. And then President Biden comes in and he has his executive order. There was an executive order for the Pennsylvania Department of Education through Governor Shapiro, another one through Governor Wolf. They all have time limits. Title IX was supposed to be added this year. Now it's pushed back to October of next year. The courts down in Florida say X. The courts up in New York say Y. We're in this chaotic mess because the actual people that get paid to do this for a living, our governor, our members of Harrisburg, our federal government, our state legislatures, they can't do their job. They failed at their job. So what they try to do is they try to sign executive orders, and that goes against what the Constitution that we swear to uphold, which is having a judicial branch and to go through policy. So abject of Title IX literally saying that gender affirming care is, or gender identity is there, because it does not in the executive order. I don't believe that we should be giving gender affirming care to every student. The students that need it get it. That's fine. That's the way the school goes. But we don't upset the entire apple cart just to prove a point. When we say we're for all students, everyone sitting on this dais is for all students. I don't believe there's not one board member that's not for all students. But the conversations I've had the past 3 weeks when someone says to me, you're not for all students, is very one-sided, because I have an opinion, and obviously Ms. Evans-Brockett has a different opinion. I think I'm for all students, and I know she thinks she's for all students as well. What we fail to understand is when you force someone to be for everything, that doesn't make everyone comfortable. There are obviously some students in this school district that are uncomfortable that someone from the opposite sex would enter a locker room or a bathroom. I am uncomfortable knowing that the PIAA would allow our house principal in the high school to put a male student on a field hockey team that could endanger that could endanger another team from another league. Last year in Pittsburgh, there was a volleyball tournament, and a girl was injured when a trans female spiked the ball, and it was a man who spiked the ball, and it broke the girl's face. I would not be supportive of something like that. I would not be supportive of anything like that. I am against policy 103.2. I am in favor of policy 720 as is. And when the court finally comes up with their ruling, and when Title IX is changed, if Title IX is changed, I will be the first one to say we shouldn't wait for policy. We need to get in there and change it tomorrow, because that's what we should do. Anyone else have anything else to say? Yeah, Ms. Evans-Brockett.
So I'd like to actually talk about the policy, because there's a lot of questions that I have. So number one, you just brought up that in policy 103 that a PV board member made a suggested change. You seem to make a big point that that didn't come from PSBA or PNN. Where did policy 720 come from?
It didn't come from PNN either, or PSBA.
Where did it come from?
Well, there are about 130 school districts that have that policy in the country right now.
Where did it come from?
The current policy, Mr. Dorr and Mr. Fountain.
Okay.
Could I answer that one?
Please.
The fact that it says 720 in the number was only because that was where it had begun. It is not the same. In this particular policy, the emphasis is on the use of the bathrooms themselves. It is not, and I even said in the policy committee meeting, that I do not look at this as being a safety thing. This is a bathroom usage policy.
Okay,
so there's a lot of differences.
Mr. Fountain, I mean, I was very grateful for the way you ran policy committee. I mean, you started out with a big speech. You said that you were being put under a lot of pressure, that people were saying horrible things to you. So it concerns me that you're so quickly changing a policy when you're under so much duress, because I feel like that's contributing to your decision to do this. Because at that meeting, you came up with a great compromise, and you said, would we be satisfying the need of all if we said that 2 bathrooms on the first floor and 2 bathrooms on the second floor were non-binary? At the end of the meeting, you said, okay, so would the consensus of the committee be to give information to Dr. Russell to be able to put together a policy that does include the compromise that was discussed? We all said yes, with the absence of 2 members. That was what was said at that meeting. That was just 1 week ago. So for there to be such a big change in 1 week gives me great concern, given all of the threats that as board members we're getting. But I mean, given that this policy is obviously going to pass tonight, but I really need to understand some things here. Policy 720, as listed right now, says that single user facilities can be used by both students and staff during the school day. Are you proposing that all single user facilities be unlocked for students and staff to use the same facilities throughout the day?
Yes.
Okay.
Some ones that are in offices, like in the main office, there's a separate bathroom in there.
Okay, how many single user facilities total are there in our school buildings for these students to use?
So I think I shared those data maybe last month. I don't have them.
You shared the single user facilities that are currently open to students. This policy is saying that all single user facilities, including those that are currently only accessed by keys by staff members, would be open to students.
Yeah, the numbers are different. That is correct, if that's what you're getting at. The numbers are different.
Yeah.
So there are more single-use restrooms available or in existence in our facilities than are available to students.
Okay. So I know that was a concern from administration, opening up staff bathrooms to student use, because our teachers do have a very limited time that they're able to use the bathroom. It's not like they can get a pass during their class to go use the bathroom because they need to cover students. So I think that's an issue with this policy. It says that multi-user facilities will only permit people of the same sex. My question is, how do we handle that if a toddler needs to go into the bathroom with their mother? This policy at this point does not allow a mother to take their male toddler into the bathroom. I'm asking a question. If we're not going to do this during policy and have these discussions, we have to have them now.
Come to order. The room will come to order, please. Come to order, please. You're asking about a toddler?
I'm asking because right now, this policy says only people of a biological sex can go into the bathroom that matches that sex. That would not allow a mother with a male toddler to take her child into the girls' bathroom.
During school hours, are you talking about?
This covers all. This covers during and after school activities.
Yeah, during school hours, parents, guardians, visitors, and volunteers shall not use multi-user student restrooms. Single-user facilities are open to everyone.
Yeah, but this covers use and after-school activities too, saying that you have to use the bathroom assigned to your sex. And I get the laughter.
That's the multi-use facility. We have the single-use bathroom, so obviously.
I'm asking.
I'm sorry? A sporting, you mean outside?
Yeah, like when we have a basketball game and there's a male and female and they come with siblings and they take, like, if this is gonna be around before and after school, those are some of the nuances that.
It says visitors, restrooms access during school hours, parents, guardians, visitors, and volunteers.
I'm talking about after school hours.
Does this policy mention after school hours?
Yes.
Where? The other policy did, not the new one. This is a new policy. They rewrote it. It doesn't mention it. It covers during school hours.
Okay, so then when a mother volunteer comes in.
With your toddler?
It's happened, Jason.
And this is school-wide, so this
Yeah.
would be at an elementary level where they're in, I mean, you have to consider all these avenues.
So
That's
this is,
yeah.
this is
So they
only
can use the one-on-one
You're
then.
proposing that this policy is only during school hours. So at after-school events, people can still use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with.
No, where does it say that? Where would anyone say that?
Well, that's my question, because we have policy 103 that says.
Policy 103 doesn't mention restrooms or bathrooms.
Okay. So, but this one does not mention after-school hours.
No,
So.
not at all.
It would not So help me understand. You're telling me that.
Maybe we
the
should remove
current-
gender identity from policy 103, that way there's no confusion.
Can you call order, please, Mr. President?
The room will come to order. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I am trying to have a real discussion about how this policy will be enacted.
I know, but you're reading the old policy, not the new one.
No, I am reading the current policy, and you're right, it does not say after-school hours, so now I'm asking you, what are the rules for after-school hours, because we don't have a policy for after-school hours.
Only thing that says anything about during school is the volunteer section at the bottom. The policy will stand during school hours and after school hours.
Okay, so you're saying this policy applies to after-school hours as well?
It doesn't, it's a blanket policy, correct?
Okay, so then I go back to my question of, if there is a parent that needs to take their child of the opposite sex into the bathroom at an after-school event, they, by this policy, are not allowed to.
I think that's how I read it. I read it that they have to use the single stall.
Okay,
So-
there's no single stall in the stadium. I mean, these are the reasons that we have policy committee. I get people are laughing that I'm being ridiculous, but this is what policy does, and this is why we have policy committee meetings.
That's not
in
true.
order.
That's not true, because that would mean we had elongated conversations about what those two words that we added to policy 103 means. It's not true, but that's fine, but that's not true.
But it's not either. It's not either. Just technically, you're not correct. You see, the kid in this example doesn't identify as that gender, so it wouldn't fit under your policy anyway. So it wouldn't be allowed no matter what. You have not provided for that. You should have talked about this years ago.
Great, thank you for pointing that out, that we need to have a longer conversation about this in policy.
This was the policy that everyone always thought that it was. No one had any reason to believe that the policy was not that you enter the bathroom of the gender with which you were born, with which you were assigned at birth. So your biological gender. And it was a surprise to many, many people that this policy existed here. And it was intentionally kept secret.
No, I think you can't speak for the intentions of the previous board members. That's just ignorant. So, but I will say, this is
There were
clearly.
plenty of opportunities that was presented to the administration in my discussions with them over the past 2 years to have the conversation about the use of the bathrooms by people who identify as the opposite gender. And they kept quiet, and they did not answer my questions about the bathrooms, and they intentionally, it appears to me, did not tell me that the policy allowed people to enter the opposite bathroom. Now, again, that is my experience, and had I known that that policy was in place, and I didn't, I would have talked about it far earlier. We would have had this discussion. We would have had this discussion 2 years ago. We all would have had this discussion.
Can you tell
2
me
years ago.
how you know it's a boy versus how you know it's a girl in the bathroom, just by looking? Because essentially, these teachers have to be able to enforce this
Right,
policy.
and this proposed policy that you have, I mean, I've been identifying as a woman for more than a year. I grew a beard. I wear a
Mr.
suit.
Keenan, I'm sorry, you're being actually hateful and triggering towards people.
The point.
The room will come to order, please.
First of all, that is,
Please, let's.
Mr. Saylor, you need to remove that person.
Leaving.
Are we going to call it in order?
this is the same gentleman that is a coach for children in our buildings. This is the same gentleman that's a coach for children in our buildings. The same gentleman.
The
Same gentleman.
The illustration is merely.
This is not okay. This is attacking and mocking individuals
me
that
now.
have a
Are
feeling.
you attacking me? Like bullying me? Like all those other people at that other meeting?
Just said that you're a
Is that it?
woman and you grew a beard and you
This is not
completely
okay.
mocked
It's not okay for you to
transgender
do that.
individuals.
I am here to protect women, and you are not.
I am a woman.
Last time I
am
checked,
a woman.
Keenan,
I am here to protect women from people like you.
You know what, Keenan? You and I go to the same church. We hear the same messages every week, and I've never brought it up. But I want to tell you here right now, this is not what we're learning each week. This is not how we treat the people who come to us who are transgender, who are from a different race, who are from a different religion. We're supposed to love thy neighbor. So you can sit over there and you can mock, but do not sit there and try and pretend with your Bible that you're actually being a Christian right now, because you're giving all of us a bad name.
Can we?
And
I'm asking, can we refocus on the policy?
back to
discussion?
one point that I definitely want to make for everybody and how far we've gotten off track. In 1972.
Wait, are you speaking as a woman right now, or are you back to being Mr. Keenan?
In 1972.
Hold on, Mr.
Sorry.
Keenan. Listen. Two things. We have police here. We could just clear the room and continue to have this conversation. So I ask that board meetings are in public, not for public. So and to all board members, don't address the crowd, address the board.
So give me a second to explain something that hasn't been explained, and it should have been explained in depth. And it's been avoided. Like, this topic has been avoided and was avoided since 2018. No one had heard of this. It's been avoided. It's been kept secret. It's been festering, whatever. We haven't talked about it. Nobody was given an opportunity to talk about it. Well, what has been discussed in public and at the national level, and what was passed in 1972, was Title IX. Title IX mandated that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Now, notwithstanding Title IX's general prohibition, and I'm surprised Jason referenced this, but no one has told you all that the statute provides an express carve-out with respect to living facilities. So everybody that spoke that said this is contrary to Title IX was wrong, dead wrong. Jason was right. This is in alignment with Title IX. Furthermore, the regulations implementing Title IX explicitly permit schools receiving federal funds to provide separate toilet, locker room, and shower facilities on the basis of sex, so long as the facilities provided for students of one sex are comparable to facilities provided for students of the other sex. This is permitted, and it was expressly carved out by our federal government, by our legislature, by the majority of Americans in 1972 for the benefit primarily of women, but of all Americans. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. So we wouldn't continue throwing around that this is against Title IX. This is not within Title IX. This is not permitted by Title IX. There's going to be a lawsuit. This is in alignment with Title IX and the history of this nation. So
Boyertown versus Doe precedent has been set. We'll have fun when we have to sit in court, because we will.
Are there any other discussions? If not, I'll request that is there, yeah, Dr. Kohler.
I just wanted to clarify one thing
Yes.
because regarding policy 103.2, I intentionally did not mention sports or locker rooms because I do think that that is a topic that needs further discussion. So don't mischaracterize that policy. That policy is strictly about bathroom clarification. It does not have anything to do with sports and locker rooms, and I feel like that's taking it to a level that I did not include here.
Sure, and my opinion with that, as I made clear prior, is that becomes discriminatory. We'll give you access to the bathrooms, but then we'll limit your access to the locker room. And I don't, that's a slippery slope to me. I'm not saying that that's what you were thinking at all. Mrs. Mayers and Mr. Dorr.
So over social media and even at the meeting last week, the policy committee meeting, we keep bringing up the Boyertown School District case. The case that mirrors this the most, if you want to do your research, I brought this up at the board meeting, was shouted down, is Adams v. School Board of St. John. It was upheld by the Circuit Court of Appeals. It's not in our circuit, it's the 11th, unfortunately, but that policy most mirrors what this district is trying to do, and it is case law. So Boyertown is a much different case.
And but to Dr. Campley's process, different courts. Like we're not, yeah, correct. We're not in Florida. We're in Pennsylvania. But there are school districts in Pennsylvania that have policy 720 that have not been sued. Are there any other discussions? If not, I'll see if yes. Oh, I forgot.
So I'm wondering, Mr. Dorr and Mr. Fountain, I mean, I do appreciate Dr. Kohler and Mrs. Evans-Brockett's, some of how you would like to at least have the discussion as a full board. That was Mrs. Evans-Brockett, and I appreciate some of what you said, Dr. Kohler. So I'm wondering, Mr. Dorr and Mr. Fountain, do you want to hear from administration? I mean, we're here. I would prefer to work on the policy as a board, or you want yours to go through just as is what you're asking for?
That is what I'm asking. I'd be fine with, I mean, just like every policy, it goes back to policy committee. We make revisions as it goes. I'm comfortable with this policy, and I'm going to stand with it.
There's a motion to approve policy 720, use of restrooms and locker room facilities. Is there a second?
No, I still have more questions, please. Thank you. It's obvious that this is going to pass tonight, so I just want to refer back to our board work session of January 3rd, 2022, when Mr. Saylor changed the way that our committees work. I was against this because I didn't think that it was appropriate to have board members vote and then the tie or whatever be broken by administration. But Mr. Saylor's words at that time was, so when the administration is ready to move something to the work session, when the committee's done listening to the community, when they're done listening to the people that came out and participate in the committee sessions, it would be voted on how the committee would put that forth into the work session. This gives a little bit more of information on how the committee, the 4 individuals who are on that committee and in the administration felt about that action that can lead to debate in the work session. The school boards that do this have talked openly about how that structure has added and enhanced the committee meetings, because now it kind of ensures that the board members do a lot more listening to the community and then putting their thought process when something gets added to the work session.
Correct, but just as we've seen, like when the administration was very supportive of SPOs and some board members weren't, sometimes the administration doesn't get what they want, and sometimes they do. There's a motion to approve policy 720, use of restroom and locker room facilities. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Dr. Campley?
Absolutely not.
Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Mrs. Evans-Brockett?
No.
Mr. Fountain?
Yes.
Mr. Keenan?
Yes.
Dr. Kohler?
No.
White?
No.
Mrs. Mayers? Mr. Saylor?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion to approve policy 103.2, transgender and gender non-conforming students. Is there a motion? Is there a second? Roll call.
Dr. Campley?
Yes.
Mr. Dorr?
No.
Mrs. Evans Brockett?
Yes.
Mr. Fountain?
No.
Mr. Keenan?
No.
Dr. Kohler?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Mayers? Mr. Saylor?
No.
Motion fails.
Ms. White, education?
Item 4.01 is the Education Committee of the Whole. I'll let, oh, there is none. There is none? Oh, because of the kindergarten presentation. 4.02 is the approval of cyber services agreement. It's a motion to approve cyber services agreement as presented, and I so move. Are there any questions? I'm sorry. I'm all flustered here. If there are no questions, can it go to consent? Great. 4.03, approval of credit by exam agreement. The motion is to request to approve the Westchester University's credit by exam agreement offered by the university's Department of Earth and Space Sciences. Or is there any question or conversation? Okay, we'll move that to consent. 4.03, approval of credit by exam agreement. Did I read them out of order? Okay, let's start from the top. Okay. 4.04 is the approval of memorandum of understanding for the Head Start program. It's the request to approve memorandum of understanding with Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for a Head Start program at Schwenksville Elementary School. Are there any questions or comments? Move that to consent. It's an action item for 4.05. It's approval of field trips. The request is to approve the following field trip as reviewed and forwarded by the building principals and district administration, and I so move. Are there
Any discussion?
questions or-
I just want to offer something if I could. I want to offer a correction. There was a question posed to Dr. Smith and I during agenda review asking which students are entitled or eligible to take this trip. I responded it was students in the environmental clubs, the respective clubs at East and West. We have since learned it is a lottery system in 7th grade only. It is not just those environmental students. So I wanted to clarify that for the group.
See, but my question that they asked is, so this is for 86 students. Are there more than 86 students that can go on the trip?
Yes, I can speak to that. I'm not positive on the number of students that have applied or expressed interest at West, but Middle School East has itself 90 students. We have talked about the possibility of adding an additional bus. Speaking with the advisors, we think that that is not feasible for this year,
Why?
but that it would be for next year. I believe it has to do with the actual facility that we're going to, and adding a bus at this time and another 40 students, they cannot accommodate us. Because there's other groups that also use the facility at the same time. So something that could be considered in the future. The trip seems to have become more popular over time, and so that is why for the last couple years they have a lottery system in place for the students once they have expressed interest.
Yeah, so this is different than what was presented during the agenda review, so now I just have a bunch of questions. I apologize. What is the lottery system? Like, we're just
I
picking a
believe
name?
it's first come, first serve, if I remember correctly, at West anyway.
I would don't want to misspeak, so I can find out exactly how they're doing it. I thought it was a random draw.
That's different than first come, first serve.
I can find that out.
Yeah, it is, you're right.
That's disappointing. But it is what it is. Like the place can only hold 86 kids?
No, it doesn't. It can accommodate more. However, because we reserved for 86 students, they have other groups that also use the facility at the same time. So they are maxed out at this point in time that we can't add another group.
Is there a way to do it again for the other kids? Like, do it again sometime this year?
I could speak to the teachers to see if they would be willing to take another group.
I mean, this is not something that is uncommon. I'm thinking back to when my daughter signed up for the Germany trip. There was only so many spots for that as well, and it was kind of
Yeah.
whoever got on first and signed up, that's who, I mean,
But that's first come, first serve, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is also a reality that sometimes these things occur, so.
Any other discussion?
I would just say I have tried to communicate with one of the teachers. I'm not sure that they will be paying attention to their phone at this time, but I can find out more about the lottery system.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
4.06 is a placeholder. 4.07 is the enrollment report.
Thank you very much. Business, Mrs. Mayers.
Thank you. Finance Committee of the Whole, Mr. Weaver.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about some finances. Just want to say that we were responsible for putting these seats in, and I don't know if they were much better than the plastic ones. I just thought I'd tell you now. So it might take a little bit of loosening up here. I apologize for that. Okay, so we'll start with the menu for tonight. If we would go for, ooh.
Dr. Smith, do you have the clicker? Could you pass that on to Mr. Weaver? Yeah. Thank you.
Well, he's on fire with the seats.
Mr.
And now
Weaver, we'll talk about the chairs later.
Yeah. You can't have this when you leave. Okay. Okay. So here's our menu for tonight. Real quick, we'll move forward with, we do have an updated letter from Mr. Mowry in regard to the ESCO project. Mr. Fabrizio and I, we continue to meet with the ESCO 5.0 group, including CM3 representatives, the multiple different layers of representatives as well, with Mr. Fabrizio and myself from an update. And of course, you do have that in your packet. That is in the board agenda for review. We continue to move forward on multiple, finishing up on phase 4 and the status report for phase 5 as well is included. We're making good progress on 5, just for your filament. All right, moving forward. So tonight, we are recommending the purchase of a tiny robot line marker purchase. This is Finance Committee of the Whole 5.02. It's on the board agenda. This is directly related to a conversation we had last month and an approval from the school board with an agreement for the Perkiomen Valley Youth Soccer League. To set this up, that agreement continues to be worked on. That is a draft, and there's certain give and takes for part of this as part of the sponsorship. To let you know that this started with a conversation with the grounds crew, Josh Bertolf, who was our lead ground person, brought it forward to Mr. Fabrizio. There was a lot of conversation going back and forth about what we needed to look at. We looked at 2 different robots, and essentially this is for robots that paint lines for our sports fields. Saves an awful lot of time and energy, and we went through and calculated the savings associated with each of the fields and what we estimated we would save in terms of labor and supplies if we would move forward to purchase this. Keep in mind that the district receives that robot. That's why it's on. We will purchase it. And the Perkiomen Valley Youth, as part of that sponsorship, they do get a reduced break on their rentals for the fall and the spring for 3 fields up at West, and a reduced fee for use of Schwenksville during the winter season. But they're still responsible for full cost for security as well inside. And we get use of that robot to see as we see fit throughout the entire district. It's not just stuck up at West. And this is something that the grounds crew is really looking forward to for the multiple fields we have in different layers throughout the district. Again, this is through CoStars. It's $41,170. It's a 5-year sponsorship agreement that the Perkiomen Valley Youth Group would pay us $8,234 and some change every year moving forward once we get that finalized agreement in place that we did approve last month. And we are recommending that. And it was good group effort and team effort between the operations grounds and the business office. Any questions on that? Thank you. Much as we've done the past several years since Mr. Fabrizio's arrival, we are working on snow removal RFP. That went out in the streets, and we're very happy to recommend moving forward with Lenhart at the rates as posted there. Again, we didn't have much snow last year, so that was a savings for us as far as what we budget. However, this year, if you read the Farmer's Almanac, it looks like we're in for it this year. So we will definitely need these services specific to Skipback, Schwenksville, and South. We are recommending moving forward. Any questions on that? Okay. Thank you. Moving forward to the food service computer upgrade. This is a computer upgrade that we knew that was coming. The current provider for our Premier Edge software and computer equipment is going end of life, April 2024. We did know that. We kind of waited until we had Mrs. Gartner in our view here. She got to work. She's been working with Mr. Ganesh. They moved forward. We had several different quotes that we looked at, and we were recommending moving forward to purchase 22 computers for the newer software and the complete upgrade with a point of service process that we will implement at a cost of $20,340.10, and this will be paid through food service money. Any questions on that? Yes, Dr. Kohler.
Just questions of the 22 computers, are these like what are used in the cafeterias for
Yes.
the point? Okay.
These will all be, yes, thank you for that. Yeah, it's a complete upgrade from what we have. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So 2 other items. Mr. Fabrizio is here. I'll try to get through these. We've had a condensing unit that services our high school that is failing and has essentially failed at this point in time. So Mr. Fabrizio has sourced various quotes and looked at what the recommended replacement is. We're recommending through CoStar's contract for CM3 to provide for a total cost of $22,200 for the replacement of this unit. Any questions about that? Again, it's failing. We need to go forward with it. Okay, seeing none. Moving forward in a similar fashion, we have a variable frequency drive that has failed at Middle School East. Mr. Fabrizio did the same process. Proud to recommend the CoStar's contract to get this item done, $23,100. And again, we don't know from a perspective of if this is a reflection of our higher filtration that we instituted during the pandemic or not. Mr. Fabrizio is keenly aware of that and looking at why these things are failing. They are older, but we should still be getting some additional life out of these. So we're looking at that as a possibility as far as, because we put the thicker filters in and we ran the items 24/7, which a lot of these machines are not really essentially built for the long term. So we're checking that out as well. Again, that's the recommendation, and it will be paid through general fund committee committed balances. Any questions?
Are we still using those thicker filters?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
When are we going to stop? Because we only put them in because of COVID.
Back to 8? Yeah. We can look at that and report back out.
But we're not running them all the time, correct?
Not right now, they're not. The 24/7 was the recommendation a couple of years ago. Okay, capital project update. Mr. Fabrizio.
Good evening. So Middle School West was quite the project. This past summer, we trenched the gas line. We made it by skin of our teeth for opening. We didn't have hot water on the 27th. The Board of Health was out on the 28th. It gave me the go-ahead with our hot water. The top picture are the new K&N boilers. You can kind of see the footprint of the old boiler. They were massive. They came out in big sections, so they are plumbed up. Right now, we're waiting to penetrate the roof for the exhaust and get them up and running. The bottom picture is the 18,000-gallon oil tank. Just to put it in perspective, on a cold day, we would burn 900 gallons of oil a day. So that's a lot of money. Our ROI is about, I think, 2.5 years on the gas, so we'll be saving more money. Next slide. This is the high school choir room. So we put a brand new floor in, painted the walls, ceiling. The bottom left is their new music storage system. So those units slide out for more music storage. Any questions? Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right, just some updates.
Mr. Weaver,
Yes.
before you finish,
Yes,
could you give a
Doctor.
brief update on the FCS room and the concession stand, and just let the public know and the board where we are with the FCS room?
Sure, as far as the
And the
FCS.
challenges around the concession stand, and when we might be able to propose to our board some changes there?
Sure. So, Joe, if you want to handle the FCS room.
Sure, the FCS room, we're just waiting on our final go-ahead from the township. We progressed as far as we could with the demo. The new flooring went in today. All our rough piping and electrical is complete. All our appliances are in. We're working with our sprinkler and fire contractor for shop drawings to get the township approval on sprinkler alterations and the new range hood, which connects into the building fire system. So if the kids are cooking on the top and there's a fire event, there's a hood now above it. It'll drop dry agent and then set off the fire alarm. So we're well underway. Cabinets are ordered. They're probably 12 to 14 weeks out. Flooring will be done tomorrow. We can move the appliances in and stage them in there. All new ceiling tiles are in. They're mold and moisture resistant. They won't sag. They have a 30-year warranty. The new air handler unit is in the ceiling. That's hooked up and ready to go. It's running now. It can also dehumidify, so they were relying on an external dehumidifier. It's all built into the system now. You don't have to think about it, it just does it. Good?
Thanks.
Yep.
Will the students be able to use the room before the cabinets are put in, or the room has to, we
We'll
have
have
to
to
wait
get a
12 or-
UNO from the township before they can start using it. We can certainly make alternate arrangements to get them up and running. If they need to make, they have the coffee bar, we can look at a kitchen setup in there and put the coffee maker in there and so forth. So we can accommodate.
So maybe by next month, we can share some pictures. I know that you were aiming for completion right around now, if possible. I know
Yep.
some things are on back order, but it would be helpful to share the progress with the board. And then if
Absolutely.
you could talk just a little bit about some of the challenges we face with the concession stand in anticipation of a proposal to the board. I think it would be really helpful, because there have been some individuals that have approached me wondering what's the status of this particular project. So that would be
Sure.
helpful too. Thank you.
So as far as the concession stand goes, we continue to look at different ways of doing things. We've completed the sewer part of that. We've completed the electrical part of that as part of our overall plan. We continue to break down the different components to address the various needs, especially the internal stuff. And we're looking at some serious ways internally that we might be able to do that work. And then break out a portion of the ADA bathrooms that we are planning on taking up the current space where the concession stand is now. And those will need to be outsourced. We'll definitely need to do an actual bid project with those two items because of the heavy regulation that's associated with those ADA bathrooms. But the internal stuff is one of the last parts that we're working on. We have plans drawn up. We just need to get the action to move forward with those internal documents to get those done, to get the permit, and then do the construction, the minimal construction that is left inside the new space. Part of that is Mr. Fabrizio actually had a trailer placed on the outside of the high school. There used to be 3 big chiller units. There's now only 2. There is a pad there. Mr. Fabrizio did schedule for a large trailer to be placed on there. It's already fenced in, and we can break open the fence, and then the grounds crew equipment that's in that current space that we want to utilize for the concession stand, that can then be moved over into that trailer. And once that is open, then that space is available for us to go in and do those minimal construction requirements that we need to do. So we're making progress. Obviously, that won't happen before the end of this season with a couple of games left. But it is something that we continue to juggle as far as getting this completed. Any other questions about that? Oh, okay. So the Act 1 index was confirmed. It is a 5.3 Act 1 index. That's very high. It's the highest it's ever been. And this is a cut sheet that Amy and I use when we look at what that means for possibility for new monies moving forward to still remain at or below the Act 1 index. This is just a general gauge for us. And again, remember the Act 1 index just allows us and sets the bar for us going out for a tax increase. We are not going to a 5.3 tax increase. We haven't even begun that process. However, we do know that from this calculation, a resolution will be coming forward in the next couple of months once we get that, so this board can look at that and approve it as we have over the past couple of years to say, hey, we're going to remain within the Act 1 index, and we'll work within there as part of our normal budget process. Okay? Yes, Mr. Dorr.
Mr. Weaver, why do you think it's so high? I mean, with all the COVID money that came out over the last couple of years, I mean, is there any rationale for it?
Yeah, so remember, the way that the variable is created is it's created by two factors. Those two factors are the CPI and the statewide weekly wage. Obviously, just think about it with our own wages that we pay over the past couple of years in the pandemic or coming out, wages have risen significantly. So the statewide weekly wage is definitely the farther rising component of that. Inflation comes into that, CPI comes into that as well. It's brought together in a 50-50 ratio, and then they spring that calculation. Remember, a couple of years ago when this first came out and the legislature developed this, they thought this would be a panacea for us for capping school districts for going higher, or you have to go out for a vote, referendum vote. And they very quickly found that every year they could be different. And so they started going up and down. So they said, okay, let's do an average of 3 years. So they merged it, and that actually kept it down lower. But now with several years starting to build, the estimation from PASBO is that that number, the 5.3, will be even higher when we create the 25-26 Act 1 index because it's peaking now. So, you know, we'll have to watch that and check that out. That's the only reason why it's going up. There's nothing that any other school district does or anything like that, just those two variables. Here is what it looks like from a historical perspective. Again, this is we like to play with numbers and provide these items. This is the largest Act 1 index in the 14 years. Definitely, I can put that as we track that. And you can see our millage rate there, what the value of a mill is, and what the ultimate and the ending tax increases were, what the Act 1 index was for us, and where we ended up. So those are numbers that we kind of show and share and track. As part of that, now that we have the Act 1 index moving forward, typically we have two different timelines that we follow, one with the resolution, one without. The Act 1 index is so high, I am just showing you the one where we sign the resolution and get to business relatively quickly. Any questions on that? Let me know. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. 5.02 will be a motion to approve tiny mobile robots. Does anybody have any questions? If not, we can move that to consent. 5.03 is going to be a motion to approve snow removal. Any questions? If not, we can move that to consent. Approval, 5.04, approval of computers for food service. That will be a motion to approve computers for food service. Are there any questions? Then let's move that to consent. 5.05 will be a motion to approve DX coil and outdoor condensing unit. Any questions? Let's move that to consent. 5.06 is will be a motion to approve the variable frequency drive motor. Any questions? We'll move that to consent. 5.07 will be a motion to approve the 2023-2024 special education contracts. Are there any questions? Can we move that to consent? 5.08 will be a motion to approve a confidential settlement and release agreement as presented. Any questions or discussion? Move that to consent, please. 5.09 will be a motion to approve a confidential settlement and release agreement as presented. Move that to consent unless there are any questions. 5.10 is on consent. 5.11 will be a motion to approve community ed agreements. Any questions? Move that to consent. 5.12 will be a motion to ratify substitute teacher service agreement. Any questions? Please move that to consent. And 5.13 is report on grants and donations. That ends my section.
Payment of bills, Mr. Dorr. Thank you. Professional personnel, Dr. Campley.
7.01 through 7.05 are all on consent. 7.06 is a placeholder. Looking for a motion to ratify mentors as listed, and 7.07 is an approval of memorandum for understanding. If there are no questions on either of those, they can be moved to consent. 7.08 is a sad one, but also congratulations. Acceptance of the administrator's resignation for Dr. Smith. I'm assuming we're voting on that one tonight? No?
I was going to ask, would it help if we did? Or does it make a difference?
It's not necessary.
Okay.
She's already been appointed, but thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to move it to consent for next week then. Okay, then that ends my section.
Support personnel, Mr. Keenan.
801's on consent, 802's placeholder, 803, 4, and 5 are on consent.
Thank you very much. Comments from the audience?
Todd McKinney, Collegeville Borough. Mr. Saylor, Dr. Russell, board members and administration, good evening. I come here tonight to ask a few questions concerning the state affairs within our fair school district. This past school year, and now in the current school year, we have been presented with a number of concerns that affect the PV community, some of which has caused a divide among neighbors, faculty, staff, families, and students. We have the whole world watching what we do, and not in a good way. It seems to me that folks are more concerned with winning on a particular point or issue than working to ensure all students are valued and protected. When it comes to expressing a desire to harm others with threats of bombings and bodily threats to administrators or board members, I am saddened that a person or persons' viewpoints outweigh the educational mission of PV. The use of fear as a tactic to scare folks to your way of thinking because you may not like or understand the decisions of the administration or the board does not give anyone the right to threaten or harm those within our community. Whether you realize it or not, the actions of few may and will affect the learning that takes place within our schools. Why must we behave in a manner that is so harmful to our students, staff, and administrators? Why do you fear the other? Why do you deny their humanity, their right to learn in an environment that is free of judgment and condemnation? Why must we stoop to the level of savage discourse, tearing one another down? Fear is a mind killer and will cause more harm to our students' learning abilities if this silliness continues. To use falsehood, lies to make a point is dangerous. Allow students to live their truths and be who they are without feeling unsafe in a setting that should provide comfort and support. After all is said and done, who will be left to put the pieces of our beloved PV school district back together? How will we heal the hurt, the pain caused by our words and actions? Remember this one thing. Our children are watching and learn from what we do and how we behave.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Johnson, Shrinksville. I am not meant for 3-minute things. So the other piece that I wanted to talk about was when there was a woman that had come up and spoke about how we're not preparing our children for the workplace, the college, the yada, yada, yada. When our children become adults and go into adult institutions, their experience will be very different. But they are children. And so as such, they are going to be they need to have age-appropriate stuff. So while my college kid is going to be experiencing different things, that is not something that my high school kids and my junior high kids are going to be dealing with. And I do believe that it is important to note that that is the same argument that is used by certain people to push this idea that we need to have softcore porn in our school libraries because, well, they're gonna see it anyway. That is absolutely outrageous. It's outrageous. We have never operated like that, and we should not be operating like that now. And then the other piece that I wanted to just touch on was the gender affirming care. Like I said, it is not oh yes, this is exactly what we should be doing. And the foundation that a lot of that idea is founded on is by the research of John Money, who was a pedophile. And ironically, all of his very sick studies failed miserably. So when we're talking about people, like that's a bandwagon that people are jumping on or are too scared to stand up and go, this is wrong. This is wrong. We do not treat children like this. We need to be addressing this. This is, when you do that model, you are not addressing, and not that y'all should be addressing any of it. This is school. Y'all are supposed to be teaching academics. Like, I will prepare my children for the real world, just like y'all will prepare your children for the real world, and etc. And y'all's value systems are going to be way different than my value systems, and that's fine. I'm all for that. Y'all take your kids and do your value systems on your children, but do not put those value systems on mine and then to sit here and say, well, we need to have this open bathroom policy because in the real world they're going to be dealing with this. Absolutely they will. But this is not, these are schools. They're supposed to be protected here. So that was the other piece I wanted to say. Thank you.
Anyone else? Comments from board members? Any board members like to make a comment? Dr. Campley?
Just going to apologize to all the students that are going to either are here tonight and have seen what this board has done, or are waking up tomorrow and have seen what is being done, and that they may feel that their rights were not protected, and I do apologize to those students. And I apologize to administration and to the teachers who now have to figure out tomorrow how to implement this when we don't really have the nuts and bolts together. So I wish you all luck tomorrow. I'm sorry.
We have a policy that we're supposed to live by, which is policy 11, which states that we will accept that when a board has made a decision, it's time to move forward collectively and constructively. And for far too long, that continues to be deflated when one side doesn't get their way. And I find that to be just sad. That's how the legislative body works, Dr. Campley. So when we take...
You have a right to your opinion, and I have a right to mine, and I have a right to stand up for those, the minority that doesn't really have a voice. So I don't have to agree necessarily. It is what it is. I'm wishing administration luck because they don't necessarily know what they're doing tomorrow. And I can apologize to the students who feel hurt. That isn't going against what the board has done. You know what? You interrupt me any other time, so now's my turn to interrupt you. So if you're going to sit there and you're going to tell me that I'm not following the way we're supposed to be, you haven't followed the rules once. So you sit over there with your little, special cap of whatever you seem to think that you have, being in the board president chair, and have fun with that.
Thank you, I will. We're supposed to act when a decision's made. It's time to move forward collectively and constructively, and I hope that we're able to do that, unlike that has happened in the past. The other thing that I wanted to make mention is, I know not many people are here anymore. And this is This is more to the students of our school district. You know, when we have a music event or a football event or any type of an opportunity where our community comes together, you know, we have another failing in our society where we think it's cool to go on the TikTok and Snapchat and do really bad things. There was an incident that happened at the football game, and I don't want to talk about specifically that incident. It's what everyone thought was funny to do, was to show someone's worst instance, potentially in their life, and put it on TikTok and put it on Snapchat, and how quickly those things made it to social media, and they were published on social media. We need to do a better job. You know, no one would want to see their mother get punched in the face, or their son get punched in the face, or their brother get punched in the face. To have students watch that happen, and to hear the giggles and laughter, and then to see how quickly it flooded to social media, it's disappointing, because it's not indicative of who we are, but it's indicative of what our society is on these devices that are made to connect us and to make it easier to get connections. I could reach a relative far away by sending them a text message or calling them on a cell phone, whether in my house or in my car. But far too much, our children are using Snapchat and TikTok, and we're not privy to what's happening, because we've kind of put in silos of where we are. These items aren't funny, and we need to all do a better job making sure that our children know what's better to do, what's best to do. That's, you know, it's better to break something up than to record it and then blast it out for everyone to see. These are people's weakest moments, and they're not to be made fun of or mocked. Mrs. Mayers?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First, I want to just say I'm very excited also to hear that all-day kindergarten sounds like it's going to move forward, and thrilled to have some community members come out and also ask for that support from the board and the administration. So that's very exciting for our school district. And then secondly, just to address the policies that were proposed and passed, well, I would have appreciated more conversation about the policy, since there were some questions raised from administration. Ultimately, we are the adults in the room. We can make accommodations. We are making accommodations for our students who don't feel like they need more privacy, or it's twofold. We're making an accommodation, and that I'm thankful for that, because we do that for other students and other groups of students, as of course we have to by law. But that should not make a student feel less than, or not valued, or not supported, or anything like that. So that's my message to students who will now be using single-use bathrooms. I do think going forward, I'm going to ask for committee to look at coming up with a policy for sports, so that we ensure that their biological males and biological females are competing with one another. So that's something that I'll be asking for. And just lastly, there was a community member who sent a recommendation that we read a book called Nonviolent Communication, and I'm 2/3 of the way through it. I know that sometimes our school district suggests books to students to read. I think it's very much well worth reading, because the goal of the book is to help us all communicate and hear one another, even though we may not agree. And I was very pleasantly surprised for most of the evening with the public comment from the community members, and how respectful most of the discourse was, and I'm grateful for that.
Ms. White?
Thank you.
I just want to say that I appreciate the administration and all of the teachers in our buildings that work every day to make every student feel valued and seen and protected.
I want to remind the families in our community who have children that struggle day to day that I, as a parent and as a community member, have great confidence and hold a very high esteem for all of our teachers and administrators in this district. That being said, again, you know, I did reiterate it earlier that every single human, this is a humanity issue as far as I'm concerned, has a right to feel safe, protected, loved, without any type of recourse or othering. And so I ask administration, as I had asked when this policy was first presented, to please make sure that they work with the buildings to make sure that the students that need the support, in light of the passing of the will of the board, to get that support. And in addition, one of the other things that came up was with regard to accessibility of these single-use bathrooms. In West, in particular, there is an issue with there only being one available. Currently, I don't know what the numbers change to when you look at the other bathrooms available, but you know, there is an inequity among our buildings for the availability of these facilities, and I'm sure that there's not an even distribution of students that may or may not need to use them. So I just want to make sure, you know, you have, I don't know, you have probably about 15 hours to figure that out. And then the last thing that I will say is that not only do I appreciate and value discourse, dissent, and debate among different ideas, I think that it is the cornerstone not only of our society as Americans, but also as a global society. What I don't value is intentional mockery, humiliation, devaluing of another person's humanity or their right to live their own truth. And so for that, I respectfully ask that in the future, even if emotions run high during a debate, that it is not allowed at this table as examples in this community to allow that to happen. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to finish with, on a positive note, but I thank Dr. White for sticking up for me. I was chastised and attacked for my religious beliefs tonight by that side of the table. I was called out as not a good Christian, as not living up to the moral standards to which I subscribe to. It was hate speech, and it was an attack, and no one cared except Dr. White to stick up for me. And I appreciate that so much. But I did want to say that October 6th is a big day. It's spring forward, and I want to wish our football team all the luck in the world. I'm really excited for them, and I know they're going to win.
Anyone else? Ms. Evans-Brockett.
I'm going to try to end on a lighter note here. Our Perkiomen Valley Marching Vikings have their home show this Saturday right here at Keenan Stadium. 8 bands are competing. The first starts at 6 p.m. PV performs at 8:15, so please come out and support our Marching Vikings. After PV, there's going to be a special exhibition by Kutztown University. And then the other thing is I got a little notification on my phone today that it is Custodian Appreciation Day, wherever Mr. Fabrizio is back there. I put this notice on my phone years ago when I served as the home and school president for Skipback Elementary, because I don't know what we would do without the custodians in this district. And every year that I've been a parent and a volunteer in this district, I've realized just how much they do and how little thanks they get. So a big shout out to all our custodians today. Thank you.
Ms. Evans-Brockett, is the mattress sale still going, or is that closed? It's closed? Okay. Do you have anything to add?
I do not, thank you.
10.03 is a notice of video recording, and I will rule adjournment.